Chapter 3840. In the depths of the void. The blazing sky-cleaving axe gradually slowed down and soon returned to normal. The flames dissipated. Inside the sky-cleaving axe, the gold origin dragon emperor's body withered and fell to the ground. Xianxia had pushed him too hard for the past 4 hours. He did not dare to relax at all. In the end, he had burned his divine blood and power for 4 hours. It was as if his entire body had been drained dry. Previously, in order to use his ultimate skill, he had sacrificed 5,000 years of his cultivation, causing his vitality to be greatly damaged. Now his injuries had worsened. His aura and divine power had completely withered. Even his divine Dao foundation had been damaged. This was the worst injury the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor had ever suffered in his life. This was not something that could be recovered in 1 or 200 years. In fact, even if he escaped back to the Sirius Star Zone to recuperate, he might not be able to recover his damaged divine Dao foundation. At the thought of this, the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor trembled in anger. He felt as if a knife was twisting in his heart. Unparalleled resentment burst forth. Dragon! Heavens! The Gold Origin Dragon Emperor roared in a hoarse voice. His face was distorted as he cursed, "You damned worm! I will remember today's humiliation. I will return it 100-fold in the future. If I don't grind your bones to dust and tear the members of the Myriad Demon Alliance into pieces, I swear that I am not a dragon." When the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor roared the last word, he spat out a mouthful of blood. In a fit of anger, his head tilted to the side and he fainted. The sky-cleaving axe was not affected. It continued to fly into the depths of the void. Outside the dragon realm, in the void adjacent to the Xuanji Grotto heaven, a black divine ship slowly sailed over. On the deck of the divine ship, there was a jade table, a large chair, and a middle-aged profiteer in a blue robe. He reclined on the large chair and narrowed his eyes as he looked at the spatial crack that was gradually closing. The corners of his mouth curled into a smile. "Kid, I can only help you this much. What happens next is up to you," the blue-robed profiteer muttered to himself. After that, he closed his eyes and split a portion of his consciousness to control his incarnation. The Dragon General's clone hiding in the Xuanji Grotto heaven was still lurking in the dark. Under the blue-robed profiteer's will, the Dragon General clone silently flew across the sky, heading towards the exit of the Enigma Grotto. "When the matter is done, I'll leave with a flick of my sleeves, hiding my achievements and fame. Perfect." Long Zhang's incarnation muttered to himself and left with a smug look on his face. At the same time, Xianxia, God King Rahu, and the others returned to the Golden Dragon Mountain ruins. Almost 3,000 soldiers of the 10,000 Demon Alliance were still adjusting their breathing in the ruins and waiting patiently. Although they were recuperating, many people could not calm down. They were still worried about the safety of Xianxia and the others. At this moment, seeing Xianxia, God King Rahu, and the others return safely, many of the soldiers cheered excitedly. God King Rahu said a few simple words to soothe the soldiers. Then he issued a series of orders and assigned tasks to the soldiers. Some people were in charge of taking care of the injured. Through the teleportation divine array, they were sent back to the demon city to recuperate. Some people were in charge of sealing off the exit of the Enigma Grotto. Others were in charge of the reconstruction plan. After all, the 10,000 Demon Alliance had achieved a complete victory in this battle. The Enigma Grotto could be considered to have been completely conquered. They could now build a divine palace. Next, the 10,000 Demon Alliance had to carry out a series of plans to gradually stabilize and control the Starsource continent. Almost every Elder, Hall Master, and Division Master was assigned a task and immediately got busy. Not long after, the 3,000 soldiers dispersed. Only Xianxia and God King Rahu were left in the sky above the ruins. God King Rahu looked at Xianxia with a smile and said, "Young master, it is all thanks to you that we were able to achieve such a smooth and thorough victory. You have worked hard. Quickly return to the demon city to recuperate. Just leave the rest of the trivial matters to this old man." Xianxia waved his hand and looked at him. He said seriously, "Snake Fu, tell me the truth. The soldiers were able to achieve such an easy victory and kill the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor's subordinates so quickly. Did that person secretly help them?" "This." God King Rahu hesitated and nodded. "That's right. He could not attack the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor. He could only secretly help the soldiers of our alliance. Ji Tianxing smiled and said, now that things are over, he doesn't need to hide anymore. He should come out and meet me, right? God King Rahu was a little embarrassed. He explained with a smile, young master, he probably did not want to be involved in karma, so he has already left. He does not plan to meet me? Ji Tianxing raised an eyebrow and looked puzzled. God King Rahu could only nod. Ji Tianxing frowned and said, but I want to meet him. There are some things that I want to ask him about. This. God King Rahu hesitated and nodded. All right. Young master, please wait for a moment. I will contact him immediately. God King Rahu walked to the side and took out a transmission jade slip to send a message to the Black Dragon Emperor. Not long after, a divine sense voice transmission sounded in his mind. Abstruse Grotto Heaven's exit 50,000 miles southeast. I will be waiting for you. God King Rahu knew that the Black Dragon Emperor was still in Abstruse Grotto Heaven and had not left. He hurriedly said to Ji Tianxing, young master, he has agreed to meet you. I will bring you there. God King Rahu then brought Ji Tianxing and rushed to the Abstruse Grotto Heaven's exit. About 15 minutes later, the two of them were 50,000 miles southeast of the exit. They saw a burly man in black armor and covered in dragon scales. This was the Black Dragon Emperor's Long Jiang clone. He was standing on a mountain peak, quietly looking down at the cliff below. Ji Tianxing and God King Rahu descended from the sky and landed on the grassy mountain peak. Long Jiang's clone had his back to them and said calmly, I have already helped as much as I can. Why are you not satisfied? His deep and vigorous voice carried a hint of displeasure and irritation. Ji Tianxing looked at Long Jiang's clone's back and then at God King Rahu beside him. He suddenly smiled. No wonder he refused to reveal his identity and you wanted to hide it from me. So it's him. Clearly, Ji Tianxing had determined the other party's identity through Long Jiang's clone. God King Rahu could only smile awkwardly and take a step back. He bowed and said, young master, please continue. Ji Tianxing did not say anything else. He waved for him to leave and walked toward Long Jiang's clone. When he was 100 feet away from Long Jiang's clone, Long Jiang suddenly raised his hand and said, all right, don't come any closer. If you have something to say, say it. Ji Tianxing's smile deepened. He cupped his hands and bowed. Long Tian greets the Black Dragon Emperor. After bowing, he said in a mocking tone, I'm not a snake man. I'm not poisonous. Why are you hiding so far away? I think you're not only poisonous but also evil. It's better if we keep our distance. Long Jiang's clone shrugged and turned to look at him. Chapter 3841. Me? Poisonous? Ji Tianxing looked at that square face with a wide nose. His expression was particularly interesting. If he did not know the Black Dragon Emperor's nature, he would not believe that this dragon general with thick eyebrows and big eyes would say such words. Old Black Dragon, you have to give me a reasonable explanation today. How am I poisonous? We haven't met for more than 1,000 years. This is the first time we meet and you're telling me this? Ji Tianxing glared at Long Jiang's incarnation with anger written all over his face. Long Jiang's incarnation rolled his eyes at him and said angrily, you've only returned to the dragon realm for 2 months and you've already offended the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor. In less than 2 years, you destroyed the mysterious Grotto Heaven. The Gold Origin Dragon Emperor's right-hand men and trusted generals were all killed by you. You also severely injured him and forced him to escape into outer space. Tell me, are you poisonous? I don't dare to be too close to you. I don't want to be implicated by you. I don't know what kind of trouble you're going to cause. Ji Tianxing was speechless. Thinking about it carefully, it did make sense. He was unconvinced and asked again, then why do you say that I'm evil? Long Jiang's incarnation crossed his arms and looked down at him. He asked with a playful smile, you've refined the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor's trace of Dao aura, right? Ji Tianxing was stunned. He thought to himself, how did you know? However, he immediately reacted and asked subconsciously, so you've been hiding in the dark to watch the battle? Long Jiang's incarnation smiled and continued, looks like you've admitted it. Then I want to ask you, how did you do it? Do you know that Dao aura is the most mysterious thing? Even peak godly kings can't understand it. Since ancient times, there have been less than 20 peak godly kings who could condense Dao auras. As for learning, imitating and comprehending other people's Dao auras, there's not a single one. What are you doing? Creating a miracle? Breaking the rules? Defying the heavens? Ji Tianqing was speechless. After all, he still hadn't figured out exactly what was going on with that mysterious dreamscape. He couldn't believe that he had really absorbed the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor's Dao ripples. He would never tell the Black Dragon Emperor that he was only at the 8th level of the Divine King realm. He had yet to become a peak Divine King. Tell me, aren't you very evil? Long Zhang's incarnation looked at him vigilantly and said in a serious tone, "This emperor seriously suspects that you are a freak." Ji Tianqing curled his lips and pondered for a moment before replying, "Maybe it's because I'm too outstanding." The Dragon General's incarnation rolled his eyes again. "Alright, I don't want to ask you how to refine his Daoist rhyme, even if you tell me I can't do it. After all, I'm not a little monster like you. I only want to say that I have already risked the wrath of the heavens by secretly helping you this time. If there's nothing important, let's part ways here. We won't see each other for 100 years. Long Jiang waved his hand and turned to leave. Ji Tianqing had a mocking smile on his face as he asked, "That's not like you. You weren't so cowardly in the past. Why are you so afraid of the will of the heavens and karma? Are you afraid that I'll implicate you? But the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor is already severely injured. He can't threaten you at all." Long Zhang's incarnation glanced at him and said, "Kid, things aren't as simple as you think. I was too naive previously. If I knew that you were a freak, I wouldn't have helped you." The Black Dragon Emperor and Long Tian had always been on good terms. Although the two of them were seniors and juniors, they addressed each other as brothers, as if they were close friends despite the difference in age. That was why the Black Dragon Emperor had no scruples in front of Ji Tianqing. He would say whatever was on his mind. Because of some unspeakable reasons, he hid some secrets in his heart that he couldn't reveal. Of course, there were also questions that had troubled him for thousands of years. Now that he saw Ji Tianqing's performance, the Black Dragon Emperor had even more guesses and was even more fearful. Seeing the Black Dragon Emperor's reaction, Ji Tianqing realized that something was wrong. He hurriedly asked, "Old Black Dragon, do you know some secret? Tell me, what secret is it? Is it related to my master's disappearance?" Long Zhang's incarnation narrowed his eyes, and a strange light flashed in his eyes. However, he didn't admit it. Instead he asked, "Do you think I'll answer your question? If I were to ask you what you have experienced in the past 1,000 years, would you answer me truthfully?" The answer was naturally no. That was why Ji Tianqing remained silent. Long Zhang's incarnation didn't say anything else. He said, "I still have something to do. I'll take my leave first. See you in 100 years." He had too many questions in his heart. He needed to return to the Black Dragon continent as soon as possible to analyze, investigate, and figure it out. At the same time, the Myriad Demon Alliance needed 100 years to stabilize and control the Starsource continent. Ji Tianqing hurriedly reached out and stopped Long Zhang's incarnation. "Wait. I can promise you that I'll look for you in 100 years. However, I have something very important that I need your help with." Long Zhang's incarnation turned to look at him and said, "Say it. I'll try my best." Ji Tianqing explained, "Ophiuchus might have told you that I returned to the Dragon Realm to look for my son Wu Hen. He was captured by a peak Divine King. That expert is most likely from the Dragon race. Of course, it's also possible that he's not from the Dragon race. Instead, he's proficient in the Dragon race's divine ability." After he finished speaking, Long Zhang's incarnation waved his hand without hesitation. "Ophiuchus said this before. I don't know anything about it. I've never seen the human youth named Wu Hen." Ji Tianqing revealed a disappointed expression. He said sincerely, "Even if you haven't seen him, I want you to help me ask the other Dragon Emperors and Peak Divine Kings." Long Zhang's incarnation thought for a while and said, "The other Dragon Emperors might not be in the Dragon Realm in recent years. As for those Peak Divine Kings, other than the Black Dragon continent, I'm not familiar with the Peak Divine Kings of the other continents." Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "All right. In any case, try your best to help me ask. I'll also go and look for him myself. I'll leave you a few communication jade slips. If there's any news, inform me." After he finished speaking, he waved his hand and shot out a ray of golden light. It wrapped around a few communication jade slips and sent them to Long Zhang's incarnation. Long Zhang's incarnation accepted the communication jade slips and said, "Myriad Demon Alliance still has a lot of trivial matters for you to deal with. It's not that easy to be a supreme overlord. It's best that you take control of the Star Source continent first. After stabilizing the situation, you can investigate this matter. Tianxia smiled and waved his hand. He said, "Leave these trivial matters to Ophiuchus. I'm not interested in the position of overlord." Long Zhang's incarnation was stunned. He said with a face full of astonishment, "Did I hear wrongly? You've caused so much trouble and you don't want to be an overlord? Then what are you after?" Tianxia smiled and said, "I just want to have a place to stay in the Dragon Realm. No matter what happens in the future, this place can be my final fortress and home." Ophiuchus created the Myriad Demon Alliance and developed it into the second largest faction in the Star Source continent. And I've been forced to become enemies with the Mysterious Paradise. So I can only go with the flow and plan ahead. First, I'll destroy the Mysterious Paradise and support the Myriad Demon Alliance. Just to have a place to stay, you destroyed the Mysterious Paradise and overthrew the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor? Long Zhang's incarnation had a strange expression. He gave Tianxia a thumbs up and praised sincerely, "You're really something." After he finished speaking, Long Zhang's incarnation did not linger. He turned and flew away without hesitation. Not long after, he left the Mysterious Paradise. "I wish everyone a safe and healthy life. Also, please give me a few recommendation tickets." End of chapter. Chapter 3842. When Tianxia and the 10,000 Demon Alliance's soldiers returned to the 10,000 Demon City, a piece of shocking news quickly spread. The Golden Origin Dragon Emperor has suffered a crushing defeat. His subordinates have all been slaughtered. The 10,000 Demon Alliance has won. This piece of news was purposely spread by the 10,000 Demon Alliance and quickly spread across the entire Star Source continent. In just a few days, the hundreds of domains of the Star Source continent and the billions of citizens knew about this shocking news. For a time, all the demon tribes on the continent who were paying attention to this matter and received the news were stunned. Many people were unwilling to believe this result. They thought that the 10,000 Demon Alliance was spreading rumors to slander the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor. However, no one dared to refute this news. As time passed, more and more information began to spread across the continent. All kinds of news confirmed the 10,000 Demon Alliance's victory and the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor's crushing defeat. Therefore, those demon tribes who were unwilling to believe could only accept the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor's crushing defeat. Everyone knew that the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor's era was over. The 10,000 Demon Alliance's era was coming. The overlord of the Star Source continent was about to change hands. The various domains, countless forces and billions of citizens were discussing this matter with mixed feelings. Many people were unwilling to let the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor's era end. They were conflicted about the 10,000 Demon Alliance's era. They needed time and some process to accept this reality. Many empires, domain lords and forces were already planning and considering how to curry favor with the new overlord in order to gain more benefits. Some forces who were originally inclined towards the 10,000 Demon Alliance or were loyal to the 10,000 Demon Alliance were overjoyed and excited. As the saying went, a new emperor brings in new subordinates. Now that the 10,000 Demon Alliance was in control of the continent, their status as subordinates and vassals of the 10,000 Demon Alliance would skyrocket and become the noblest force. They were eager to see the 10,000 Demon Alliance take over the Star Source continent. They could not wait any longer. Half a month later, the outside world was still discussing the 10,000 Demon Alliance's victory. The soldiers of the 10,000 Demon Alliance treated their injuries and rested for half a month before returning to their posts. As one order after another was issued from the Myriad Demon City, the forces of the Myriad Demon Alliance scattered in various regions began to take action. Public opinion and publicity were just preparatory work in order to give the people of the world some time to mentally prepare themselves. In the following actions, the 10,000 Demon Alliance tried to be conciliatory and gradually spread out from the territory of the 10,000 Demon Alliance. It required time and patience. For many years to come, the members of the 10,000 Demon Alliance would have to work hard. However, there was nothing they could do about it. Alliance Master Luo Ho had given strict orders that they could not use force unless absolutely necessary. Everyone in the Alliance understood that it was easy to conquer the world, but difficult to defend it. If one wanted to smoothly take over the Star Source continent and obtain the approval of the billions of people, it was not something that could be achieved with brute force alone. If he was overbearing and killed at every turn, it might have the opposite effect. Just like that, under the leadership of God King Luoho, all the work and operations of the Myriad Demon Alliance proceeded in an orderly manner. As time went by, more and more empires, regions and forces joined the 10,000 Demon Alliance and bowed their heads. The 10,000 Demon Alliance's strength continued to grow, and so did the number of members. However, God King Luoho did not blindly increase the number of members. When he recruited members, he carefully selected and tested them. Those who were able to join the 10,000 Demon Alliance were all elites with extraordinary strength and loyalty. In a short 3 months, the 28 regions in the northwest of the Starsource continent all belonged to the 10,000 Demon Alliance. In this region, there were hundreds of empires, thousands of forces, and more than 100 billion people who were willing to submit to the 10,000 Demon Alliance. After all, this was the territory of the 10,000 Demon Alliance. It was the headquarters of the 10,000 Demon Alliance that had been operating for hundreds of years. In the process of taking over this region, the 10,000 Demon Alliance faced the least resistance. There were basically no killings or battles. However, everyone knew that the territories that the 10,000 Demon Alliance was about to take over would not be so smooth. After all, there were 72 regions in the Starsource continent that had previously been loyal to the Xuanji Grotto Heaven and treated the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor as their master. Even if the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor had been defeated and fled the Dragon Realm, the 10,000 Demon Alliance's control of the Starsource continent was a foregone conclusion. However, there were still many loyal supporters of the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor in the 72 regions. Regardless of whether it was a conspiracy, an open conspiracy, a military conquest or negotiations, the 10,000 Demon Alliance had to use all sorts of methods to successfully take over the 72 regions. Of course, these were all matters that the Luoho Supreme Being and the other elders had to worry about. Ever since Ji Tianxing returned to the 10,000 Demon City, he had entered a secret chamber to cultivate in seclusion. He had not shown his face since. Of course, the Luoho Supreme Being would not trouble him with such tedious matters. Previously, he had been leading the 10,000 Demon Alliance soldiers in a battle of wits and courage against the Xuanji Grotto Heaven. After that, he had fought a few thousand rounds with the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor in the void. He had used up a lot of his divine power. In fact, he was already exhausted. He had only been holding on with his strong will. After returning to the 10,000 Demon City, he entered a secret chamber to recuperate in the distorted space-time. Now 3 months had passed in the outside world. He had been cultivating in the distorted space-time for 12.5 years. In these 12.5 years, not only had he healed his injuries and recovered his divine power, he had also strengthened his foundation of the divine Tao. The Daoist rhyme that he had absorbed from the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor had completely integrated into his body. It had become his own Daoist rhyme. This had allowed his strength to reach a new level. His battle prowess had also increased exponentially. Other than that, he had also cultivated the heaven-punishing divine art and various mystiques. This had allowed his cultivation base to increase further. He was steadily approaching the 9th tier of the God King realm. After cultivating in seclusion for so long, he had finally ended his cultivation and came out. When he opened his eyes, he saw that Yunyao was sitting beside him. She was meditating silently as if she had been waiting for him. Sensing that he had ended his cultivation, Yunyao also stopped meditating. She opened her eyes and looked at him. Ji Tianxing looked at Yunyao and asked first, "Yao Yao, you have been waiting for me. Is there something you want to tell me?" Yunyao nodded and said calmly, "I only ended my seclusion a year ago. I was worried about your safety in that matter. That's why I came to guard you." "That's right. Has the matter at the Xuanji Grotto Heaven been settled?" Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said, "It has been settled. The Gold Origin Dragon Emperor was severely injured. He has escaped to the extraterritorial galaxy. He will probably hide and recuperate for a few hundred years. We have killed all the God Kings and God Monarchs under him. Now that the Starsource continent is stable, the 10,000 Demon Alliance is gradually taking over the various regions. It will take a few decades." After pausing for a while, he asked, "Yao Yao, do you want to ask about Wu Hen?" Chapter 38:43. Ji Tianxing's guess was correct. Compared to him, the father Yunyao, the mother, was the one who was most worried and wanted to find her son the most. In Yunyao's opinion, whether or not they supported the Myriad Demon Alliance and successfully seized the position of overlord was not that important. Finding Wuhan as soon as possible was the most important thing. She looked at Ji Tianxing and said in a serious tone, Tianxing, actually, even if you don't say it, I understand your thoughts and plans. Even though you once lived in the God realm for hundreds of years and had your own forces, your forces have been destroyed. But your forces have already been destroyed and your former subordinates and supporters are in disarray. The casualties are uncountable. And your enemies have become the 5 God Emperors who control the entire God realm. You want revenge very much, but before you have the confidence to kill the 5 God Emperors, it will be very difficult for us to establish ourselves in the God realm. So, you want to establish a place in the God realm, build a home and use it as our harbor and backing. Even if you can't defeat the 5 God Emperors, you can at least take us back to the Star Source continent in the Dragon realm, recuperate here and plot to develop. Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said with a gratified expression, all this time, you have been the one who understands my intentions the most. That's right. I have always wanted revenge and I have also been working hard for it. But the closer I am to the peak of the God King realm, the more I feel how powerful and terrifying the God Emperor realm is. I have never had the confidence to face one of the God Emperors head-on. So, before I start my revenge, I want to build a home in the Dragon realm, and use it to settle you and everyone else. Only by ensuring everyone's safety can I go to the God realm without any worries, and find the 5 God Emperors for revenge. When she heard this, Yunyao held Ji Tianxing's hand and shook her head lightly. Tianxing, you have always protected us and thought of everything for everyone. And all the dangers and hardships are borne by you alone. We know you want revenge, so we will advance and retreat with you and we will never back down. We will not let you take revenge on your own. We will do our best to help you achieve your wish. Because we're a family, we're a whole and we can't lose anyone. The last sentence made Ji Tianxing's heart tremble. He felt a little warm but also a little sad. He held Yunyao's hands tightly and nodded solemnly. Don't worry, I've already thought of the next plan. I have already asked the Black Dragon Emperor to help me inquire about Wuhan's whereabouts. 1 year later, when the Myriad Demon Alliance is safe, I will leave the Star Source continent and look for Wuhan. Yunyao smiled and nodded. Without saying anything more, she returned to the sacred tree and continued to cultivate. Ji Tianxing stood up and walked around the blood flame sacred tree to check on everyone's condition. Ji Ku Wushuang, Bai Long, Chao Qingyu, and the others were all healing and cultivating under the blood flame sacred tree. Everyone's injuries had more or less healed, and their strength was steadily increasing. After so many years of bitter seclusion except for Wushuang and Jinhong, everyone had broken through to the God King realm. Even Qianyu had broken through to the God King realm under Hu Xinyue's guidance a month ago. Seeing this result, Ji Tianxing was very gratified. Therefore he left the distorted space-time and went to find God King Luoho. 15 minutes later he saw the busy God King Luoho in the Alliance Master's study. In the past few months the Myriad Demon Alliance had been busy. As the Alliance Master, God King Luoho was naturally the busiest one. Every day he had to deal with thousands of memorials, check countless messages and issue countless orders. When he saw Ji Tianxing he temporarily put down his work and brewed a cup of tea for Ji Tianxing. Young master, you've been in seclusion for so long. Have your injuries and condition recovered? Don't worry, they've all recovered and my strength has increased. Ji Tianxing nodded and took a sip of the tea. How's the situation recently? Is the takeover of the various domains going smoothly? He knew that God King Luoho's time was tight, so he cut to the chase and went straight to the point. God King Luoho hurriedly reported, to be honest, young master, the 20-odd domains in the northwest have been unusually smooth. They were previously under the Alliance's control, so there have been no setbacks. However, the few domains that the Alliance is about to take over have not been very cooperative. Although they haven't resisted openly, they've been feigning compliance and making all sorts of excuses. However, young master, don't worry, these are all within our expectations. They're just small matters and I'm confident that I'll be able to handle them quickly. Ji Tianxing nodded and said earnestly, as the saying goes, the beginning is always the hardest. It's only been a few months, so don't be impatient. Take it slow. I've long predicted that this would take at least 60 to 70 years to complete. Young master, you're right. God King Luoho cupped his hands and bowed. Ji Tianxing reminded again. Now the domain lords of the 72 domains and the various forces are watching the Alliance's actions closely. After all, they're all very nervous and unsure of the Alliance's attitude and methods. In the process of taking over the next few domains, you must pay attention to the appropriate limits. You must be conciliatory and avoid being too ruthless and overbearing, so as to avoid causing conflict and panic among the other domains. However, you must remember not to be too soft so as to prevent the other domains from thinking that the alliance is weak and timid. When it's time to act, you must not be soft. Only then can you intimidate those with ulterior motives. You must remember that the alliance is the true victor. Our position as the overlord of the Star Source continent was won with our blood and strength. God King Luoho looked at him with bright eyes and finally relaxed his brows, revealing a relieved smile. Young master is wise. I know what to do now. It was obvious that he had been worried about this matter during this period of time and couldn't make up his mind on how to deal with it. He was also very clear that the process of taking over the next few domains was very important. Not only were the other domains keeping an eye on the Myriad Demon Alliance, but the Myriad Demon Alliance also had to use this process to express their stance and attitude. Now that the young master had helped him make the decision and set the tone, he instantly felt confident and determined. Ji Tianxing smiled and nodded. He continued, I will stay for a year and wait for news from the Black Dragon Emperor. After a year, if nothing unexpected happens to the Star Source continent, I will leave. At that time you will have to make all the decisions yourself. Don't disappoint me. God King Luoho was stunned and said somewhat anxiously, Young master, are you leaving so soon? Why not stay for a few more years? Ji Tianxing waved his hand. I have something very important that I must do as soon as possible. God King Luoho understood his meaning and didn't try to persuade him anymore. He bowed solemnly and said, Young master, don't worry. I will complete my task and smoothly take over the Star Source continent. I will have a firm control over it and wait for your return to succeed the position of Dragon Emperor. Chapter 3844. Ji Tianxing was stunned by God King Luoho's words. Although he had told God King Luoho that he was not interested in the position of Dragon Emperor, God King Luoho was adamant. However, God King Luoho stubbornly insisted on his own view. He always believed that he was the only one who could inherit the throne of Dragon Emperor. Ji Tianxing wanted to explain and persuade him, but he could only swallow his words when he saw God King Luoho's determined eyes. He knew that even if he said it, it would be useless to change God King Luoho's mind. Therefore he patted God King Luoho's shoulder and said with a smile, Let's not talk about this for now. In the next few decades you will have to work harder. The two chatted for a while and Ji Tianxing left some minor details before leaving the study. God King Luoho continued to deal with government affairs, while Ji Tianxing returned to the secret room and entered the distorted space-time to continue cultivating. Time flew by. Time passed silently. A year's time passed very quickly. In this year, God King Luoho had followed Ji Tianxing's instructions and used both soft and hard methods to gradually subdue one domain after another. The Myriad Demon Alliance had tried to rope in and appease those who wavered and did not have a firm stance. Together with the general situation and pressure, they had succeeded. As for the few who had a firm stance and were die-hard supporters of the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor, the Myriad Demon Alliance decisively used thunderous methods to make an example out of them. This method was indeed effective. Killing a few experts and destroying a few factions had effectively intimidated the other domains. At the same time, it did not arouse public anger or conflict. Under God King Luoho's command, the elders and hall masters of the Myriad Demon Alliance used all their skills to take over 11 domains in a year. Through this year's actions, the Myriad Demon Alliance had also expressed its stance and attitude. The other domains could see the determination of the Myriad Demon Alliance. This played a great role in promoting the following work of incorporation and takeover. At least, the remaining 61 domains understood the Myriad Demon Alliance's determination. They knew that the situation could not be reversed. They could only submit and submit. The only thing they could do was to wrangle and negotiate with the Myriad Demon Alliance for more favorable conditions. Meanwhile, Ji Tianxing, who hadn't shown himself for a year and had been in seclusion in the distorted space-time for 50 years, finally came out of seclusion and appeared. Unfortunately, he had been cultivating in seclusion for 50 years in the distorted space and time, but he still hadn't reached the 9th level of the God King realm. With his current strength, every increase in realm was incomparably difficult. As for the other high God Kings, they would often need thousands or even tens of thousands of years before they could advance by a single level. No matter how monstrous he was, without a huge opportunity, it would be very difficult for him to reach the 9th stage realm within a few decades. Ji Tianqing was not disappointed by this, and he was mentally prepared for it. Of course, although he hadn't broken through to the 9th stage realm, but his foundation in the divine way had become increasingly stable, and his cultivation had also deepened by 1-fold. With his current battle prowess, he could do whatever he wanted in the dragon realm without fear of anyone. After coming out of seclusion, Ji Tianqing woke up Yun Yao, Ji Ku, Bai Long and Qian Yu. He told everyone about his next plan. The situation in the Star Source continent has stabilized, and the Myriad Demon League has taken control of this continent. I have decided to leave and go to the other 4 continents to find all the peak god kings and find out the whereabouts of Wuhan. What do you want to say? Yun Yao, Ji Ku and Wu Shuang of course nodded in agreement. Bai Long, Zhen Hong, Chao Qingyu, Yang, Bai Feng and the others also had no objection. Ji Tianqing looked at Qian Yu and said, "By the way, Qian Yu, there are only a few clansmen left in the Heavenly Fox clan, and Hu Xinyue is the strongest. You can cultivate with her as soon as possible. Why don't you stay in the Myriad Demon League and follow her?" Before he finished speaking, Qian Yu shook his head and said, "Old Ji Hu Xinyue has indeed taught me, and I am very grateful to her. But I have already broken through to the God King realm, and I have mastered the Heavenly Fox clan's inherited mental cultivation method and remarkable skills, so it is meaningless to stay. Of course, I will follow you and help you find Wuhan's whereabouts. Don't think about leaving me behind. We have depended on each other for so many years and we can't be separated." Depended on each other? Ji Tianqing couldn't help but frown, and he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This word was too exaggerated. But he also knew that Qian Yu was very stubborn and refused to stay, so he stopped persuading him. "Since no one has any objection, it's decided. You can do what you need to do." Under the bloody flame sacred tree, Ji Tianqing waved his hand, indicating that everyone was dismissed. Everyone said goodbye and returned to the bloody flame sacred tree to meditate and cultivate. Only Yang and Bai Feng's reactions looked a little strange. Yang stayed and told Ji Tianqing that he wanted to go to the Sword World and live with the Earth Spirit clan. Ji Tianqing nodded and agreed and sent him into the Sword World. Meanwhile, Bai Feng left the bloody flame sacred tree and stopped in the distorted spacetime thousands of kilometers away. He started to use divine techniques to create mountains, forests, rivers and waterfalls. He also built a divine palace on the mountain peak to serve as his cave abode and residence. Ji Tianqing observed for a few hours and discovered that the mountains and rivers he created were exactly the same as the one he had built on the 3rd level of the Divine Tower. I didn't think that this guy would have such a hobby. He even has requirements for his residence and illusions? Ji Tianqing chuckled and muttered to himself before leaving the distorted spacetime. Before leaving, he found Divine King Luoho and bid him farewell. Divine King Luoho had known that this day would come. But when this day finally arrived, he still felt a little sad and reluctant. He and Ji Tianqing had a private conversation in the study for 2 hours. The main topic of their conversation was the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor. Both of them knew that the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor had suffered great losses, and he would not be able to recover without resting for 200 to 300 years. In other words, the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor would not be able to return to the Dragon Realm to take revenge on the 10,000 Demon Alliance for the next 300 years. However, Ji Tianqing still needed to know which star zone the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor's forces were in. Divine King Luoho knew about this, so he mentioned the Sirius Star Zone and briefly explained the situation in the Sirius Star Zone. Ji Tianqing said that he knew what to do. If he had the chance in the future, he would go to the Sirius Star Zone to eliminate all future troubles. 2 hours later, Divine King Luoho followed Ji Tianqing out of the study. Then in the plaza outside the Divine Palace, Divine King Luoho and the other elders and Divine Kings bowed in unison and respectfully sent Ji Tianqing off. Ji Tianqing waved goodbye to everyone, turned around and stepped into the sky. His handsome figure quickly disappeared into the horizon. Divine King Luoho and the others looked in the direction he left in and stood there for a long time before they collected themselves and continued with their work. They knew that no one in the entire Dragon Realm could threaten their young master. They were not worried about their young master's safety. They only had one thing to do, and that was to take over the Star Source continent as soon as possible and not disappoint their young master. Bookhouse Reading Website. Chapter 3845. After leaving the Demon City, Ji Tianxing stayed in the Burial of Heaven and drove the Burial of Heaven to the north. Next he would rush to the Sky Dragon continent to visit the various peak divine kings and search for and investigate Wuhan's whereabouts. If the terrain of the Dragon Realm was displayed on a flat surface and made into a map, the center would be in the center. The upper left corner was the Sky Dragon continent, the upper right corner was the Black Dragon continent, the lower left corner was the Crimson Dragon continent, and the lower right corner was the Holy Dragon continent. The 5 continents were not connected and were separated by the boundless sky sea. Ji Tianxing was currently in the northwest of the Star Source continent, very close to the northwest border of the continent. Therefore, the closest continent to him was the Sky Dragon continent in the upper left corner, northwest. In addition, there were other reasons why he decided to go to the Sky Dragon continent to investigate. After all, that continent was the territory of his master, the Sky Dragon Emperor, and it was also his home that he was very familiar with. Even though Dark North had inherited the position of Dragon Emperor and controlled the Sky Dragon continent for thousands of years, he still wanted to go back and take a look. However, the Burial of Heaven flew for 5 days and 5 nights. When it was about to reach the border of the Star Source continent, Ji Tianxing remembered something. Hundreds of thousands of miles ahead was the boundless blue sky sea. However, he remembered that hundreds of thousands of miles to the right was the famous Sky Rock Mountain. The Sky Rock Mountain that stood among the mountains like a rock spreading its wings was the entrance to the 9 mystical grotto heaven. Since I'm passing by here and won't be coming back for a while, should I go to the 9 mystical grotto heaven and visit the Golden Rock Patriarch to check on Peng Fei's situation? Ji Tianxing frowned and thought for a while. He decided to go and take a look. Therefore, the Burial of Heaven changed its route and flew towards the Sky Rock Mountain. It was only hundreds of thousands of miles. The Burial of Heaven arrived at the Sky Rock Mountain very quickly. Swoosh! With a flash, the Burial of Heaven disappeared and Ji Tianxing appeared in the sky. He stood in the air above the mountain peak, looking at the golden door in the sea of clouds as he muttered to himself. It seems that the Golden Rock race has indeed retreated from the world. Not only has the entrance of the grotto heaven been sealed, they don't even have a guardian guarding the door. There were no guards to report the news, and it was impossible for him to break through the entrance of the 9 mystical cave heaven. He could only take out a communication jade slip and send a message to Peng Fei. In the deepest part of the 9 mystical caves, on the summit of a lonely mountain, under an ancient tree with withered yellow leaves, an old man and a young man were still sitting cross-legged on a chessboard with a circumference of 100 feet. Peng Fei's hands formed hand seals, forming a divine seal. He was in the middle of cultivating. On the other hand, Forefather Golden Rock's expression was serene. His voice was calm and distant as he spoke of the profound truths of the great Tao, the essence and truth of the divine Tao. After a year of cultivation, Peng Fei had successfully broken through his shackles and reached the first Divine King realm. Old Ancestor Golden Rock was very pleased with this. After Peng Fei broke through, he often preached the Tao to help him consolidate his foundation of the Divine Tao. Peng Fei's talent and power of comprehension had improved after breaking through to the Divine King realm. Listening to the ancestors preaching and imparting of his experience, his strength was also steadily increasing. At this moment, a spiritual light flew in from the sky, breaking the peaceful atmosphere on the summit. The spiritual light floated in front of Peng Fei, shining with dense divine light. Peng Fei sensed something. He stopped cultivating and opened his eyes. He picked up the communication jade slip and read the message with his divine sense. He looked up at Forefather Golden Rock. Without waiting for him to speak, Golden Rock Patriarch kindly said, "If there's something urgent, you can go and deal with it." Forefather. Peng Fei hesitated, then explained, "It's a message from young Master Longtian. He's at the peak of Tianping Mountain and wants to visit you." Forefather Golden Rock frowned. He thought for a moment, then nodded slightly. "Go and bring him over." "Understood." Peng Fei bowed, then turned and flew away. On the way through 9 mystical cave heaven he met a few clansmen. In the past his presence was very low. He was unknown among the younger clansmen and was the type that was looked down upon. But in the past 2 years he had become the object of envy and respect of many clansmen. First, it was because he was favored by the forefather and cultivated by his side. Second, it was because he had just broken through to the Divine King realm not long ago. At that time it had caused a huge commotion. The elders of the clan had praised him, saying that he would become a great person in the future. Therefore the clansmen had all bowed to him politely. Their attitude was respectful with a hint of intimacy. Peng Fei nodded calmly and returned the greeting. Then he floated away. After he left, the clansmen had all praised him, saying that he was more mature than before. They said that he had an imposing appearance and extraordinary speech, and that he would become a great person in the future. When they reached the entrance of the cave heaven, Peng Fei cast a spell to open the ceiling divine formation and welcomed Ji Tianxing in. Not long after, he brought Ji Tianxing to the peak of the mountain and landed under the ancient tree. Forefather, young Master Longtan is here. Peng Fei landed on the chessboard and bowed to Forefather Golden Rock. The Golden Rock Patriarch sat cross-legged and looked at Ji Tianxing with a smile. Ji Tianxing took the initiative to bow and greet him. Greetings, Forefather Golden Rock. Forefather Golden Rock nodded slightly and exchanged a few words with him. Then he said with a kind expression, although this old man did not come out of seclusion, I still heard the news outside. Congratulations, young Master Longtian. Ji Tianxing naturally knew that he was talking about the myriad demon alliance's complete victory and control of the Starsource continent. Therefore he bowed and said, speaking of which, I should be the one thanking Forefather. This was referring to Forefather Golden Rock's departure before the battle. Both sides knew about it but did not say much. Ji Tianxing looked at the environment of the mountain peak. There were 3 thatched huts, an ancient tree and a huge stone chessboard. Even contained the Tao of heaven and earth. He could not help but be impressed. I didn't expect the Forefather's place to cultivate in seclusion to be so elegant and refined. Then he looked at Peng Fei with a gratified smile. It is your great fortune to be able to cultivate by my side. In just 2 short years you have broken through to the Divine King realm. Congratulations. Peng Fei hurriedly bowed and thanked him, saying that he had benefited a lot from following him. That was why he had broken through today. Then he asked again, young Master Longlun, why have you come to the 9 mystical cave heaven this time? He thought to himself, does young Master Longtan plan to keep me by his side and continue to guide me in cultivation? If so, should I stay by the Forefather's side or follow young Master Longtian? Unexpectedly, Ji Tianxing smiled and said, I am here to bid farewell. Peng Fei was not the only one stunned. Even Forefather Golden Rock revealed a surprised expression. Young Master Longlun, are leaving the Starsource continent? The situation is not stable yet. Young Master Longtian is leaving now. Do you really not care about the Dragon Emperor's position? The grandfather and grandson asked at the same time. They were somewhat in disbelief. Ji Tianxing nodded and explained, I am going to the Heavenly Dragon continent to find my son Wuhan. I passed by this place and came to visit. At the same time, I would like to ask the Forefather to help me keep an eye out for related news and clues. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 3846. Ji Tianxing did not explain anything about leaving the Starsource continent and giving up the position of Dragon Emperor. He straightforwardly stated the purpose of his visit and immediately changed the topic. Patriarch Golden Rock pondered for a moment and said solemnly, I've been in seclusion for many years, so I naturally haven't seen or know about your son. However, I promise you that I can help you ask around and see if other peak divine kings have seen a human youth. That's great. Thank you, Patriarch. If there's news in the future, I'll definitely thank you. Ji Tianxing hurriedly bowed and expressed his gratitude, and then he left behind 2 transmission jade slips before bidding his farewells and leaving. It was still Peng Fei who sent him out of the 9 mystical caves and watched him disappear into the horizon. When Peng Fei returned to the peak and landed under the ancient tree, he could no longer hold back the questions in his heart and asked Patriarch Golden Rock, Patriarch, young Master Longtian is clearly from the dragon race. So why is his son called Ji Wuhan and a human youth? Patriarch Golden Rock raised his eyebrows and said with a benevolent smile, You should ask him this question, why ask me? Peng Fei smiled awkwardly and said, This kind of question can't be asked face to face. Patriarch Golden Rock said earnestly, Anyone who stands out from the masses and achieves great things has their own experiences and stories. If others are willing to say, you'll know. If others aren't willing to say, why do you have to ask and add to your troubles? Patriarch, you're right. I understand. Peng Fei hurriedly bowed and did not ask any more. Soon, the mountain peak regained its silence, and the grandfather and grandson continued to preach and cultivate. After leaving the 9 mystical caves, Ji Tianxing no longer had any worries, so he rode the Burial of Heaven and left the Star Source continent. Not long after, the Burial of Heaven was like a bolt of black lightning that streaked across the sky above the boundless sea. The boundless sea was boundless. The azure blue sea looked clear and beautiful, but in reality, it contained numerous unknown dangers. In the Dragon Realm, the 5 continents were the territory of the demon race. And the boundless sea was the territory of the sea race. The so-called Sea Clan had thousands of branches. Fish, prawns, and crabs that had developed intelligence were the Sea Clan. All sorts of monsters and demons that lived in the sea were also considered members of the Sea Clan. Even though the oceanic race wasn't unified internally and had been constantly fighting since ancient times, they were divided into countless factions. However, in the face of the Yao clan from the 5 continents, the Sea Clan was exceptionally united and worked together. Therefore, the Endless Sky Sea was a forbidden zone for ordinary demon clan people. It was the most dangerous place. In the entire Dragon Realm, only divine king powerhouses had the guts and qualifications to cross the Sky Sea and roam the various continents. Of course, no matter how dangerous Tianhai was or how savage the sea folk were, it was not a problem for Ji Tianxing. When the Burial of Heaven sword crossed the sky, it was like a bolt of black lightning, extremely fast. Ordinary members of the Sea Tribe would not be able to discover it at all. Only High Divine Lords and Divine King Realm members of the Sea Tribe would be able to sense the trajectory of the Burial of Heaven sword. And members of the Sea Tribe at this level of strength naturally understood how terrifying the Burial of Heaven sword was. They did not dare to pursue or surround it, and they could not catch up at all. The Heaven's Burial sword flew for 20 days in a row, but it was calm and tranquil. Ji Tianxing had been staying in the sword world, cultivating in the distorted space-time of the Divine Pagoda. Although the journey was boring, he could use this time to focus on cultivating in seclusion. The distance between the Star Source continent and the Heavenly Dragon continent was not too far. With the speed of the Burial of Heaven sword, it only needed a month to cross the Sky Sea and land on the Heavenly Dragon continent. In other words, the Burial of Heaven sword was currently in the depths of the Sky Sea, the most dangerous region. In another 10 days, it would reach the Heavenly Dragon continent. At this moment, something happened in front of him. About 60,000 miles away on the boundless blue sky sea, there was actually a sky full of divine light flashing, and there were also deafening sounds of collisions and explosions. There was also a violent force, wrapped in fragments of divine light, forming a 5-colored shock wave that spread over the sea. Tens of thousands of miles of the sky sea was shaken, creating huge waves that were hundreds of feet high, and water splashed everywhere. The divine power in the air was abnormally chaotic, and it was filled with a faint smell of blood. When the Burial of Heaven noticed this, it determined that there was a large number of experts fighting in front of it. It immediately sent a telepathic message to Ji Tianxing, reporting the situation, and asked, "Should we go around?" Ji Tianxing's cultivation was disturbed, so he simply left the Divine Pagoda and appeared in the sword world. He replied, "No need to avoid, let's go and see what's going on." He thought to himself, are the Sea Tribe forces killing each other, or is it a war between the Sea Tribe and the Sea Tribe? Logically speaking, this area was the hinterland of the Sea Tribe forces, and the Sea Tribe should not easily enter. The Burial of Heaven sword flew forward without slowing down, and soon approached the battlefield. When they were 10,000 miles away, Ji Tianxing could clearly see the situation on the battlefield. He saw that there were at least 10,000 elite Sea Tribe soldiers on the surface of the sea with huge waves, and they were fiercely surging and charging. There were whales and flying fish that were as large as mountains, and all kinds of evolved and mutated octopuses, giant crabs, sharks, and demons. They waved their knives, forks, and halberds and opened their bloody mouths to scream. There were also tens of thousands of seabirds, spreading their huge wings, extending their sharp claws and beaks, circling and diving in the sky. Although the Sea Tribe looked ugly and ferocious, they were well-trained. They knew when to advance and retreat, and under the command of many Divine Lord Generals, they constantly narrowed the encirclement and released fierce killing moves. And the one being besieged by the 10,000 Sea Tribe soldiers was a group of close to 1,000 demons. Most of the demons were in human form, wearing armor and holding swords and spears, and it was obvious that they were a regular army. Although most of them were heavily injured, their bodies were covered in blood and wounds. But they were still tenaciously holding on, resisting the fierce attacks of the Sea Tribe army. Although the situation was precarious, the situation was still ambushed from all sides and death was certain. But the Sea Tribe army still did not give up hope, and was still fighting a bloody battle, not surrendering and begging for mercy. On the surface of the sea, there were still many corpses of the Sea Tribe and Sea Tribe, as well as many fragments of divine warships and warships. The surging sea water was also dyed red by endless blood, and it emitted a thick smell of blood. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing frowned, somewhat surprised. The Sea Tribe and the Sea Tribe are fighting? That Sea Tribe army should be from the Heavenly Dragon continent. Why would they enter the hinterland of the Sea Tribe forces? Thinking so, Ji Tianqing felt that there was something strange about this. After observing for a while, he found that among the leaders of the Sea Tribe army, there were 3 Sea Tribe generals whose performance was the most outstanding. There was a strong and burly middle-aged man wearing golden armor and a helmet. This person was transformed from a flood dragon, and he had the strength of a middle divine king. There were hundreds of wounds on his body, but he was still fighting a bloody battle, taking the lead to charge, desperately trying to break out of the encirclement. The other 2 lower divine king Sea Tribe generals should be his assistants, and they were also fighting with their lives on the line. It was the powerful battle strength and tenacious charge of these 3 Sea Tribe divine kings that could block the encirclement of the Sea Tribe army, and delay the annihilation of the entire army. Chapter 38:47. Although the Flood Dragon General and the 2 Demon Deputy Generals charged forward without any regard for the cost, the Sea Tribe army outnumbered them by more than 10 times. Moreover, the general of the Sea Tribe army was a middle-level godly king and 3 lower-level godly kings. As time passed, the number of demons decreased rapidly. Soon the entire army would be wiped out. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing decided to help. He did not have any thoughts of helping Tianqing or upholding justice. He was just curious and wanted to know the reason. At the same time, he admired the Flood Dragon General and did not want to see him die here. As a peak godly king, he could do whatever he wanted without much consideration. Swoosh! The burial of heaven's sword that was hidden in the sky suddenly shone with golden light and turned into a giant sword that was 10,000 feet tall. The burial of heaven's sword that suddenly appeared was like a golden sun hanging high in the sky. The tens of thousands of members of the Sea Tribe and the 800 soldiers of the Demon Clan who were fighting above the sea were all shocked. The battle also paused for a moment as countless people looked up at the sky. In the next moment, the golden light shone brightly. Tens of thousands of golden sword lights poured down like a storm. Swish, swish, swish. As the sword rain fell, a terrifying pressure and sword intent descended. The 10,000 Sea Tribe soldiers were terrified and their formation was in chaos. Everyone knew that the might of the rain of swords was extremely terrifying, and it could instantly obliterate the army into dregs. As for the 800 demon soldiers, they were neither panicked nor angry. Instead, they all smiled as if they had been relieved of a heavy burden. Many of the Monster Clan warriors even raised their heads to the sky and laughed out loud. They roared in a particularly heroic manner, "Sea race scum, you can't escape." Ah! The demon soldiers did not know that the tens of thousands of sword lights had locked onto the Sea Tribe army and would not kill them. They only felt that if such a terrifying sword rain fell, the entire sea region would be destroyed. Apart from the godly king experts, everyone would be killed by the sword lights. They were already going to die. It was not a loss for them to die with the Sea Tribe army. However, what happened next left all the demon race soldiers dumbfounded. Ping ping ping. Tens of thousands of golden sword lights seemed to have grown eyes, and they locked onto the Oceanic Tribe's army and bombarded them. Following a deafening explosion, blood splattered in the air above the sea and countless pieces of debris splashed out. At least 6,000 members of the Sea Tribe were instantly killed by the golden sword radiance. On the other hand, the 800 demon soldiers were safe and sound. None of them had been struck by the sword. There were still more than 20,000 sword lights left in the sky. They circled around for a while and then continued to attack the remaining members of the Sea Tribe. Only then did the demon race soldiers come to their senses and burst into cheers of excitement. "It's an expert from our demon clan. Great! An expert has come to our rescue. We don't have to die." Countless demon soldiers, whose faces were covered in blood and wounds, cheered in hoarse voices, expressing the excitement and joy of surviving the disaster. General Jiao Long and the other generals were also moved to tears. They bowed to the golden sword in the sky to express their gratitude. Meanwhile, tens of thousands of members of the Sea Tribe army were killed by the sword radiance. Only 2,000 of them survived. The generals of the Sea Tribe were shocked and furious. Many of the generals roared angrily and wanted to attack the giant sword in the sky. However, the leading general of the Sea Tribe, the middle-level godly king Golden-Scaled Shark, ordered a retreat and escaped with the surviving soldiers. Ordinary soldiers did not know the power of the golden sword, but he knew. The divine power and sword essence of the giant sword made him fearful, and he could not resist at all. He knew that the owner of the giant sword was definitely an upper-level godly king with terrifying power. Under such circumstances he could only give the order to retreat. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. In the blink of an eye, the 2,000 surviving Sea Tribe soldiers merged into the blue sea and disappeared without a trace. Xianxia did not chase after them, and the 800 demon soldiers did not chase after them either. They all collapsed to the ground in exhaustion, gasping for breath. The leader, General Jiao Long, led the other 18 generals to bow to the giant golden sword despite their severe injuries. Thus, Xianxia put away the burial of heaven's sword and appeared in the sky. Swoosh. He descended from the sky and landed in front of everyone. After the generals saw his appearance, they became more excited and bowed again to thank him. Senior, thank you for your help. We can't thank you enough. We will remember Senior's kindness for the rest of our lives. May I know Senior's name and honorific title? We will definitely report to the region leader and thank you. These low-level godly kings and upper-level godly lords were obviously the mainstays and leaders of their respective regions. Xianxia nodded slightly and said calmly, "Everyone else, leave and treat the injured." After that he pointed at the leading general and said, "You stay. I have something to ask you." The demon generals accepted the order and hurriedly returned to the crowd to treat the injured. The leading general did not care about his injuries and hurriedly bowed and said, "Senior, if you have any questions I will definitely tell you everything I know." This general was a middle-aged man in golden armor. Xianxia was only a white-robed young man, but the other party called him senior and was very respectful. It seemed a little strange, but no one thought it was strange. After all, strength was respected in this world. Many experts and old monsters who had lived for thousands or tens of thousands of years liked to pretend to be young after they transformed. Everyone was already used to it. Xianxia waved his hand and shot out a ray of divine light that enveloped the Flood Dragon General. Then the blood on the Flood Dragon General's body quickly dissipated, and the dense wounds healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. He was originally very tired and weak, but after absorbing the divine light he was immediately energized and much more relaxed. "Senior, thank you for treating me." The Flood Dragon General bowed again and thanked him. Xianxia waved his hand and asked, "Who are you? Why did you barge into the Sea Tribe's hinterland and fight with them?" The Flood Dragon General bowed and said with a gloomy expression, "Senior, this is a long story. If you really want to know, please listen to me patiently. My name is Long Xiang, one of the southern generals of the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace. This matter started 10 years ago. The southern general named Long Xiang roughly explained the cause and process of the matter to Xianxia. Although it was a simple introduction, it was close to 10,000 words and took a quarter of an hour. Xianxia was not in a hurry and listened patiently. After Long Xiang finished speaking, he understood the cause and effect of this matter. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 3848. The cause of this matter started 10 years ago. The southeast border of the Heavenly Dragon continent had been peaceful for more than 200 years. But 10 years ago, many Sea Tribe forces appeared at the southeast border and constantly attacked the various regions. These Sea Tribe not only killed the Demon Clan people, but also plundered the coastal cities and various cultivation resources. They also caused many disasters. The various territorial lords at the border ordered strict defense and also sent out armies to encircle the invading Sea Tribe. But the Sea Tribe was very cunning. They did not invade on a large scale, but they were very flexible. The various territorial lords worked hard for 6 to 7 years but still could not stop the invasion of the Sea Tribe. Instead, in those 6 to 7 years, the people of the various regions suffered heavy casualties and huge losses. This caused the few regions at the border to be in a state of panic. The people were uneasy and fled on a large scale. The situation became more and more serious. The few territorial lords could not solve the problem and could only seek help from the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace. When the Dragon Emperor North Sea received the news, he was very angry and took it seriously. But without finding the culprit, the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace's army was useless. Before the army reached the various regions at the border, the Sea Tribe retreated and went into hibernation. After the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace's army left, the Sea Tribe forces made a comeback and increased the burning, killing and looting. Helpless, the Dragon Emperor North Sea decided to send 2 southern conquering generals and a group of personal guards to the various regions at the border to investigate. The Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace had 9 southern conquering generals and Zhou Xian was one of them. He was ordered by the Dragon Emperor North Sea to the southeast border's Long Sea region to investigate the culprit. Only by finding the real culprit, the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace would send an army to eliminate them. Only then would they be able to quell the flames of war once and for all. Zhou Xian was ordered to the Long Sea region and had been investigating for 3 years. During this period he had personally investigated many clues and made great progress. Not long ago he summarized all the clues and was about to find the culprit. But he lacked 2 crucial clues. He had to enter the hinterland of the Sea Tribe and risk his life to obtain conclusive evidence. But he did not expect that when he led 3,000 elite soldiers into the hinterland of the Sea Tribe, the other party would know their route. Before he reached the target area he was intercepted and besieged. Ji Tianxing understood the situation after that even without Zhou Xian's explanation. 3,000 soldiers fought a bloody battle, but they were besieged by more than 10,000 sea species soldiers, and they suffered heavy casualties. If it wasn't for Ji Tianxing coincidentally passing by and lending a hand out of kindness, the Flying Dragon Special Forces and the 3,000 soldiers would have been wiped out and buried in the ocean. After understanding the cause of the matter, Ji Tianxing frowned. There were some doubts in his mind. However, he temporarily suppressed his doubts and left them for later. The 800 or so demon soldiers who had survived had already cleaned up the battlefield and treated their wounds. The 18 generals organized their troops and were about to lead everyone back. As the commander-in-chief, Zhou Xian had to lead everyone away from Sky Sea and return to Sky Dragon Continent as soon as possible. Although they suffered heavy casualties this time, they did not complete the mission perfectly. But it wasn't like he didn't gain anything. At least he had a suspect and some valuable evidence. Shua. Zhou Xian took out a divine warship and let more than 800 soldiers board it. Then he returned to Ji Tianxing and bowed to bid farewell. Senior, thank you again for saving my life. I will definitely report this matter to the Dragon Emperor. Oh right, after talking for so long I still haven't asked for your name? Ji Tianxing said calmly, Divine King Tianxing. Zhou Xian remembered this name and said sincerely, Thank you, Divine King Tianxing. I will definitely report this matter to the Dragon Emperor. By the way, may I ask where Senior is planning to go? Ji Tianxing did not hide it. He smiled and said, I came from Star Source Continent and am on my way to Sky Dragon Continent. Zhou Xian was instantly energized. He said with a face full of smiles, So you're going the same way as us? That's great. May I have the honor of inviting you to come along? Seeing his sincere tone and attitude, Ji Tianxing nodded and agreed. It's still very far from Sky Dragon Continent. All of you are heavily injured. If you encounter the Sea Tribe again you will be in trouble. Since that's the case I will go with you. Zhou Xian understood this. Seeing him nod he was even more excited and happy. He quickly bowed and thanked him. That's great. With you those Sea Tribe bastards will not dare to invade us. Thus, Ji Tianxing boarded Zhou Xian's divine warship and flew to Sky Dragon Continent. Along the way more than 800 soldiers stayed in the divine warships and quietly recuperated from their injuries. Zhou Xian was in charge of steering the divine warship. He could not go into seclusion to heal his injuries. He could only endure his injuries. Ji Tianxing accompanied him in the cabin. Occasionally he would cast a spell to heal his injuries and restore his divine power. At the same time he would chat with him and ask for information. He had already decided to go to Sky Dragon Continent to meet the Dragon Emperor North Sea. Not only did he want to ask for information from North Sea, but he also wanted to use North Sea's power to contact other peak divine kings to find Wu Hen. Now he was chatting with Zhou Xian to find out more about Sky Dragon Continent and information about North Sea. Other than the North Sea Dragon Emperor, who are the other peak divine kings on Sky Dragon Continent? Ji Tianxing sat on a jade chair and asked casually. Long Xiang replied honestly while steering the divine worship. There is only one peak divine king. That is the Green Phoenix Elder of Shangqing Grotto Heaven. He reached his peak 800 years ago. The Green Phoenix tribe was one of the 7 great demon clans. The Green Phoenix Elder was an elder who had been famous for more than 20,000 years. He had always been a 9th heaven divine king. When Kenshin was in Sky Dragon Continent, he was not unfamiliar with the Green Phoenix Elder. He knew that the elder lived in seclusion in the Grotto Heaven. He was very low-key and was not good at fighting for fame. He was also very respectful to the Sky Dragon Emperor. Is there no other peak divine king other than the Green Phoenix Elder in the past 1,000 years? For example, the great sage Lu Wu of the Green Lightning Grotto Heaven? Ji Tianxing asked calmly. Sky Dragon Divine Palace was the overlord of Sky Dragon Continent. The other 3 top forces were Shangqing Grotto Heaven, Green Lightning Grotto Heaven and North Sea Dragon King Palace. The great sage Lu Wu of the Green Lightning Grotto Heaven was also a 9th heaven divine king elder. Long Xiang shook his head and smiled bitterly. How can a peak divine king appear so easily? There are less than 20 peak divine kings in the entire dragon realm. This is the number that has been accumulated over the past 30,000 years. However, the imperial tutor has improved rapidly in the past 1,000 years. He should be the expert closest to becoming a peak divine king. Ji Tianxing frowned and asked doubtfully, Imperial tutor? Which imperial tutor? Long Xiang explained, of course it is the imperial tutor of Sky Dragon Divine Palace. He is the 2nd most respected expert in Sky Dragon Continent. He is the sage who has educated millions of people. Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 3849. Long Xiang's words made Ji Tianxing frown even more. He asked in a low voice, only the empires of the various regions have this position. Since when did the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace have the position of imperial tutor? Long Xiang smiled and explained patiently, Senior, the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace did not have this position in the past. However, 1,000 years ago, after the Dragon Emperor ascended the throne, he issued a decree to appoint his uncle as the imperial tutor. After listening to his explanation, Ji Tianxing understood that the position of imperial tutor was appointed by Dark North. Back in the North Sea Dragon King Palace, Dark North was the palace master and his uncle, the Ice Dragon King, had always supported him. Later on, with his uncle's help, he inherited the position of Dragon Emperor and controlled the Heavenly Dragon Continent. Dark North respected the Ice Dragon King very much, so he appointed the position of imperial tutor to show his respect. Since Dark North was the Dragon Emperor, he had the freedom to appoint the position. Even if it was different from the previous Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace, Ji Tianxing had nothing to say. Therefore he did not dwell on this issue and asked, You said that the Sea tribe has been troubling the Heavenly Dragon Continent for many years and there is no solution to it? Long Xiang nodded and said angrily, Ever since the Dragon Emperor ascended the throne, the Sea tribe has been causing trouble. In the past 1,000 years, the Sea tribe has divided into many groups and frequently attacked the borders of the continent. They burn, kill, plunder and commit all sorts of crimes. Moreover, they're cunning and flexible, causing the region lords of the various territories to be helpless against them and suffer unspeakably. Ji Tianxing frowned, but 1,000 years ago the Sea tribe had been obedient in the Heavenly Sea. They did not dare to cause trouble. Why did the Sea tribe become so rampant after Dark North became the Dragon Emperor? Long Xiang could only smile bitterly and explain, 8,000 years ago the Heavenly Dragon Emperor ruled the continent. Who dared to invade the Heavenly Dragon Continent? Our Dark North Dragon Emperor was not a peak divine king, so his deterrence was greatly reduced. Long Xiang was the general of the Southern Expedition, a general under the command of the Dark North Dragon Emperor. Of course he wouldn't dare to speak ill of the Dark North Dragon Emperor. In fact, Ji Tianxing could guess the reason without further explanation. Firstly, Dark North wasn't strong enough. He didn't have much of a deterrent force, so the Sea tribe didn't respect him. Secondly, Dark North had only ascended the throne for a short period of time, and he was too gentle and benevolent. He wasn't decisive enough and the Sea race despised him even more. Never would I have imagined that Master's successor would be such a failure. Ji Tianxing was a little disappointed as he muttered in his heart. Since he had nothing to do, he talked to Long Xiang about what happened before. The regions at the southeastern border have suffered heavy losses. Among them, the Shanghai region has suffered the most. Over the past 10 years, more than 10 million people have been killed or injured. Did you manage to find out which of the sea race's forces did it? Long Xiang nodded and said angrily, there are 4 sea race forces near the southeast border of Tianhai. They have trillions of people and countless elite soldiers. Even though I don't have any conclusive evidence yet. But according to the clues I found before, I can basically confirm that it was the Trench Department who did it. Among the 4 forces, the Trench Department is ranked first and has the strongest foundation. Its leader is the Aurora Electro Mother. It is said that she is a 9th-degree divine king. She has over 100 divine kings, close to 20,000 divine monarchs and close to 10 million elite soldiers. Ji Tianxing nodded slightly. So, when you return to the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace this time, you will report to the Northern Underworld Dragon Emperor and request for troops to attack the Trench Department. Long Xiang's eyes dimmed as he shook his head. I am only responsible for investigating the clues and reporting the results to the Dragon Emperor. As for His Majesty's decision, it is not something I can guess. Of course, His Majesty has always been diligent and loved the people. He is very angry with the sea race's repeated attacks and is very concerned about the situation of the people. This will depend on the Imperial Tutor's opinion and the outcome of his discussion with the Dragon Emperor. I hope to lead the troops and take revenge on the Trench Department. Ji Tianxing heard some clues and asked with a frown, you mean not only does the Northern Underworld respect the Imperial Tutor, he also relies heavily on him when handling government affairs? What decision does the Northern Underworld have to discuss with the Imperial Tutor? Long Xiang quickly shut his mouth and begged with a bitter smile, Senior Tianxing, this is not what I said. Please don't talk about it anymore. As a subject, how would I dare to talk about His Majesty and the Imperial Tutor? Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows. He knew that Long Xiang was overstepping his boundaries by discussing this topic, so he did not make things difficult for him. Next he chatted with Long Xiang and asked about the situation in the Heavenly Dragon continent. Of course they talked about some seemingly unimportant matters. At least it did not involve the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace, the Dragon Emperor, the Northern Underworld or the Imperial Tutor. Long Xiang was happy to answer and did not hide anything. The two of them chatted along the way and the atmosphere became more and more harmonious. Other than being grateful to Ji Tianxing, Long Xiang also felt a sense of trust and intimacy. Ji Tianxing also understood the current situation in the Heavenly Dragon continent through the scattered information. The current Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace could be described as weak for a long time. The Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace's deterrence and influence in the Heavenly Dragon continent could not be compared to 1,000 years ago. Not only were the surrounding sea tribes rampant, but they also showed no respect to the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace. Even many of the territorial lords and top forces were not afraid of the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace and acted unreasonably. The respect the people had for the Dragon Emperor and the Northern Underworld was also rather weak. In fact, many people were disappointed in him and had some complaints. Northern Underworld was also aware of the current situation, but he was powerless to change it. He could only hope to be magnanimous and love the people and influence them subtly. His own strength and prestige were not enough, and the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace's forces were not strong enough. Therefore he could not make a big fuss and forcefully take control of the Heavenly Dragon continent. He could only try to persuade them gently. Apart from that, Ji Tianxing also came to a conclusion from the scattered information he had gathered. Northern Underworld had too much respect for the Imperial Tutor. In other words, the Imperial Tutor's position was too high and his power was too great. He had interfered too much in government affairs. If the Imperial Tutor was really a sage or a strategist with great talent and vision, it would be acceptable. At least with his help, Northern Underworld could grow rapidly and gradually take control of the Heavenly Dragon continent. But the reality was not so. The Imperial Tutor's character and ability were also somewhat difficult to explain. Ji Tianxing could analyze this, but he did not take it to heart. After all, he was only here to find the whereabouts of his son and to revisit the old places and reminisce about the past. He was not here to fight for power or to seize the position of the Dragon Emperor. Why should he care so much? Unknowingly, half a month passed. Long Xiang's divine warships safely sailed out of the Heavenly Sea and returned to the Shanghai Sea at the southeast border. After arriving at the Changhai Sea, everyone had to go their separate ways. More than 800 demon soldiers were under the command of the Changhai Sea Lord. They had to report back to the territorial lord's manor. Long Xiang and 2 deputy generals had to continue north to report back to the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace. Chapter 3850. Outside a certain city in the Long Sea region in the sky above the green grassland. Long Xiang, Ji Tianxing and 2 deputies stood on the deck of the divine warship, watching the 800 soldiers leave. Only when the figures of the soldiers disappeared into the horizon did they retract their gazes. Long Xiang looked at Ji Tianxing and cupped his fists. Senior Tianxing, we will be returning to the divine palace to report to the Dragon Emperor. The mountains are high and the rivers are long, we will meet again. Wait a moment. Before Long Xiang could leave, Ji Tianxing interrupted him. Long Xiang was stunned for a moment, then he smiled awkwardly and said, Senior, do you have any other instructions? Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and said, You are returning to the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace. I am also going the same way. Let's continue. Not only was Long Xiang stunned, but the 2 deputies also looked at each other. Senior, you are also going to the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace? Yes. Ji Tianxing replied. Long Xiang's expression was a little strange, he was bewildered. After hesitating for a moment, he mustered up his courage and asked, May I ask, Senior, why are you going to the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace? I am going to pay a visit to Dark North, I have something important to ask him. Ji Tianxing replied indifferently. Long Xiang and the 2 deputies' expressions became even more strange as they looked at him from head to toe. If it was someone else, they would have already spoken rudely. But Ji Tianxing was their savior. Long Xiang could only suppress his ridiculousness and asked with a bitter smile, Senior, are you sure? You are not joking with us? Ji Tianxing looked at him seriously and said with a serious expression, Do I look like I'm joking? Long Xiang was still unsure. He mustered up his courage and asked, Senior, please forgive this junior for speaking bluntly, but why did you come from the Star Source continent to pay a visit to the Dragon Emperor? Do you know our Dragon Emperor? Ji Tianxing waved his hand and said, Don't ask about this. When we reach the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace, just help me pass a message and report it truthfully. All right. Long Xiang hesitated for a moment before nodding his head in agreement. Then he steered the divine vessel to continue on his journey. Unexpectedly, Ji Tianxing made him put away the divine warship and said, Your speed is too slow. A journey that should have taken half a month will take you a month. Therefore Ji Tianxing took out the Sword of Burial of Heaven and brought the 3 of them into the Sword World to meditate and cultivate. Swish. The Sword of Burial of Heaven turned into a bolt of lightning and streaked across the sky, heading north as fast as lightning. Originally, with Long Xiang's speed, it would take at least a month to reach the Grand Mystery Grotto Heaven from the southeast border of the continent. The speed of the Burial of Heaven sword was too fast. It only took 14 days to reach the Grand Mystery Cave Heaven. The night of the 14th day, the Sword of Burial of Heaven stopped in the depths of the mountains, amidst a vast sea of clouds. Above the boundless sea of clouds, there was a bright moon, with a circumference of 30,000 meters, shining with a dazzling white light. That was the entrance to the Grand Mystery Grotto Heaven. The divine array at the entrance was activated, and there were over 100 divine lord guards guarding the entrance. The leaders were 2 lower god kings. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianxing frowned slightly as he thought to himself, The Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace's forces are actually this weak? Thinking back, the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor's subordinates were filled with experts. There were over 100 divine lords and 6 god kings guarding the entrance to the Grand Mystery Grotto Heaven. There were even 2 upper god kings among them. Compared to the strength of the Grand Mystery Grotto Heaven's guards, the quality of the Grand Mystery Grotto Heaven's guards was simply too shabby. Swish. Ji Tianxing put away the Sword of Burial of Heaven and appeared in the sea of clouds with Long Xiang and the 2 deputies. When Long Xiang and the 2 deputies saw the Grotto Heaven's entrance, they still felt incredulous and were full of shock and admiration. Senior is really too amazing. You actually used only 14 days to reach a 1-month journey. Ji Tianxing did not say much as he brought the 3 of them to the entrance. When they arrived near the entrance, the 2 lower god king guards quickly came over to ask for their identities. Long Xiang and the 2 deputies took out their identity badges and explained the purpose of Ji Tianxing's visit. Then they entered the grand mystery grotto heavens smoothly. The observant Long Xiang noticed that when they arrived at the grotto heavens entrance, Senior Tianqing spoke less and his gaze was a little complicated. Especially after they entered the grand mystery grotto heaven, the four of them flew over grasslands, mountains and lakes. On their way to the depths of the grotto heaven, Senior Tianqing became quieter and quieter. He was always looking around, looking at the surrounding landscape and environment with a touch of sadness in his eyes. It did not seem like he was appreciating the environment, but more like he was comparing and reminiscing about something. Long Xiang felt that it was a little strange, but it was not appropriate for him to ask. Not long after, the four of them flew for hundreds of thousands of miles and arrived at the depths of the Grand Mystery Grotto Heaven. They landed in a group of magnificent palaces. This group of palaces with a radius of 10,000 miles was the famous Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace. It was located in the mountains and was built on top of hundreds of mountains. Hundreds of mountains were arranged in a special formation, forming an invisible heaven and earth divine array that gathered the divine power and spiritual chi of the entire grotto heaven. Hundreds of palaces and residences were exquisite and beautiful, emitting a solemn and vicissitude aura. There were more than 30,000 people living in the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace, and they were all elites and experts. However, there was not a single peak divine king in the entire Grand Mystery Grotto Heaven. There were only 2 ninth-degree divine kings and 12 upper divine kings. In terms of the number of experts, the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace was not even comparable to the Myriad Demon Alliance. When Ji Tianqing flew over the mountains and the palaces, he looked around with a deep gaze. Looking at the familiar mountains, palaces and residences, countless images appeared in his mind. Memories from more than 1,000 years ago surged into his mind. Everything was the same as before. There were not many changes. Not only did the hundreds of mountains and palaces not change, even the most majestic and sacred Dragon Emperor Divine Palace in the middle of the group of palaces did not change at all. Long Xiang brought him to the top of a palace and stopped. This was the residence of Long Xiang and his 2 deputies. It was only 100 miles away from the Dragon Emperor Divine Palace. Ji Tianqing stood in the night sky and pointed to the left of the Dragon Emperor Divine Palace. He asked Long Xiang, "Who is living in that divine palace now?" The mountain that was 100 miles away from the left of the Dragon Emperor Divine Palace was shaped like a sharp sword. It pierced through the clouds and had an extraordinary aura. The peak of the mountain was not spacious. It was only 1,000 feet wide and only one divine palace was built on it. Long Xiang took a look and quickly introduced, "Senior, that is the Divine Sword Peak. There is only one palace on the peak." It was said that it was called the Divine Sword Palace 1,000 years ago. Later on, the imperial tutor chose the Divine Sword Peak. He did not like the name of the palace and changed it to the Imperial Tutor Palace. The speaker did not mean it, but the listener took it seriously. No one noticed that Ji Tianqing frowned slightly and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Long Xiang pointed to the palace below and said, "Senior, this is my residence. It is late at night. You can stay here and rest for the night. I will report to His Majesty first and then tell him the purpose of your visit. Perhaps you will receive good news tomorrow morning." Chapter 38:51. When they landed in the palace, the guards immediately bowed to them. Long Xiang led Ji Tianqing to the best guest room. After settling Ji Tianqing down, he went to the Dragon Emperor Immortal Palace to report to Dark North. Ji Tianqing was not in a hurry. He sat in the guest room and waited patiently for the news. The Dragon Emperor Divine Palace was brightly lit. There were guards both inside and outside the palace. It was heavily guarded. The Dragon Emperor's study room was still lit. Through the paper window of the study room, a burly figure could be vaguely seen. He was still bent over the table, writing and dealing with government affairs. The guards outside the study room were already used to such a situation. For nearly 1,000 years, His Majesty, the Dragon Emperor, had always been diligent and devoted to his people. He would do everything by himself. No matter what the outside world thought of the Dragon Emperor, at least in the eyes of the guards, the Dragon Emperor was definitely worthy of respect and love. At this moment, Long Xiang came to the study room. He bowed respectfully and reported the purpose of his visit. The guard quickly reported to the Dragon Emperor North Sea. The busy figure in the study room paused for a moment and quickly summoned Long Xiang. Long Xiang stepped into the brightly lit study room, walked to the large purple jade desk and respectfully kowtowed in front of it. Behind the desk, a middle-aged man in a golden dragon robe with a divine crown on his head put down his work and raised his hand to signal Long Xiang to rise. This dragon emperor North Sea was tall and burly. However, he was handsome and his skin was as white as jade. Fortunately, he had purposely kept a beard. Otherwise, he would be a handsome young man. He would not have the majesty of a middle-aged dragon emperor. General Long Xiang, rise. General, you have been on a mission in the Xianxia region for 3 years. You have worked hard and made great contributions. Come, bring General Long Xiang to a seat. North Sea sat on the armchair and looked at Long Xiang with a smile. Seeing that Long Xiang was injured and his injuries were quite serious, Dark North arranged a seat for him and did not allow him to stand to report. This was obviously a great favor and high regard. Long Xiang was overwhelmed by the favor and quickly bowed to express his gratitude. After the guard brought a chair over, Long Xiang sat down nervously and began to report the results of the investigation to Dark North. In the past 3 years, the Flying Dragon Special Forces had reported many clues to Dark North. However, now that he had returned to the Dragon Emperor Immortal Palace, he had to sort out the information and report it to the Dragon Emperor. Dark North listened patiently. Sometimes he would nod his head to show his appreciation. Other times he would ask Long Xiang to explain. All in all, he was satisfied with Long Xiang's performance. He also acknowledged Long Xiang's contribution. However, when the Flying Dragon Special Forces was halfway through his report, the door to the study opened. Shua. A tall figure dressed in a black robe strode into the study with a strong gust of wind. The person who came was a tall and thin old man. His face was thin and dark and his eyes were ice blue. His entire body emitted a gloomy and cold aura. The old man in the black robe had the strength of the 9th King God Layer. He wore a luxurious crown on his head. He had the aura of a superior. Long Xiang stopped reporting and quickly stood up to bow to the old man in the black robe. He said respectfully, "Greetings, Your Highness, Imperial Tutor." Dark North also stood up and bowed slightly. He said, "Isn't the Imperial Tutor resting? Why are you here?" Without a doubt, the old man in the black robe was the Imperial Tutor, the Ice Dragon King. The Imperial Tutor nodded slightly to Dark North and said expressionlessly, "I heard that General Long Xiang had returned to the Immortal Palace. I rushed here to report to His Majesty." Dark North nodded to show that he understood. He sat back in his chair and said, "Since the Imperial Tutor is here, let's listen to General Long Xiang's report." However, the Imperial Tutor did not intend to listen. He turned to look at Long Xiang and frowned. He scolded sternly, "Long Xiang, you've got guts. You did not do your job well and made a big mistake. Not only did you not apologize to His Majesty, you even dared to ask for credit?" Long Xiang was stunned. He looked at the Imperial Tutor in confusion. Dark North also frowned and looked at the Imperial Tutor in confusion. He wondered what the Imperial Tutor was trying to do. Long Xiang came back to his senses and clasped his hands towards the Imperial Tutor. He said in a neither servile nor overbearing tone, "I have been on a mission in the Xianxia region for 3 years. I have risked my life more than 100 times to collect and investigate all kinds of clues. I have been loyal to His Majesty and have not slacked off at all. I do not dare to claim credit or ask for credit. However, I have a clear conscience. May I know why Your Highness Imperial Tutor is so angry?" Dark North was also confused. He did not say anything and looked at the Imperial Tutor, waiting for him to answer. The Imperial Tutor kicked the chair behind Long Xiang and sneered, "You are not asking for credit? There is no place for you in His Majesty's study room." Long Xiang frowned as anger and humiliation rose in his heart. Dark North hurriedly waved his hand and explained, "Imperial Tutor, please calm down. General Long Xiang didn't ask for any credit. I empathized with his loyalty and hard work. That's why I allowed him to sit down and report." Emperor Preceptor flicked his sleeves and stopped talking about this matter. He stared at Long Xiang with a dignified face and shouted, "Long Xiang, let me ask you. You've spent so much manpower and resources in the Xianxia Sea for the past 3 years. What's the result? Have you found out who the culprit is? Have you found any solid evidence?" This. Long Xiang was at a loss for words. He lowered his head and explained, "Although I haven't found the most crucial evidence, based on the clues that I have investigated for 3 years, it is enough to analyze that the culprit is one of the 4 divisions of the South Sea, the trench division. Ah, how ignorant and ridiculous. The imperial tutor sneered. This is related to your majesty's dignity and the safety of the continent. You do not have any solid evidence. How dare you come to a conclusion based on speculation? If we start a war with the trench division based on your speculation, can you bear the responsibility for the casualties and losses caused? Long Xiang was speechless again. Before he could say anything, the imperial tutor continued, You have betrayed His Majesty's trust. This is disloyalty. You have spent so much manpower and resources in the Changhai region for 3 years. You have sacrificed tens of thousands of soldiers. This is incompetence. You have not completed your mission and you have fled back to the Celestial Palace. You even tried to deceive His Majesty. This is a serious crime. At this point he turned his head to look at Dark North and asked in a pained tone, Your Majesty. This old man knows that Your Majesty is magnanimous and benevolent. But you must be careful of these treacherous officials. Do not be deceived by them. Long Xiang is a disloyal and incompetent official. How can you reward him? Only by punishing him severely could the court be revitalized and serve as a warning to others. Your Majesty, please punish Long Xiang in accordance with the law. After saying that, the imperial preceptor bowed deeply to Dark North. Long Xiang was dumbfounded. He did not expect things to turn out this way. Although he was not happy with the imperial tutor's arbitrary behavior, he did not show it. He did not express his dissatisfaction, nor did he openly oppose the imperial tutor. He did not expect the imperial tutor to distort the truth and erase his contributions. He even wanted to punish him. Chapter 38:52. Long Xiang was full of grievances, but he could not defend himself. He was in a very passive position. The imperial tutor was overbearing and aggressive, as if victory was already in his hands. With his identity, position, strength, and methods, it was too easy for him to punish Long Xiang. Seeing that Long Xiang was about to be punished for this, Long Xiang was about to be wronged. Fortunately, Dark North stood up to mediate the situation. He waved his hand and said, Imperial tutor, please calm down. Why do you have to do this? Why do you have to do this? Ever since this emperor ascended to the throne, General Long Xiang has been following this emperor. For the past 1,000 years he has been doing his best to complete this task. Even if he did not succeed in this mission, he still managed to find a lot of important clues and information. Imperial Preceptor, General Long Xiang has worked hard even if he didn't have any merits. How can I punish him? If that's the case, won't everyone be disappointed? Dark North was very confident in Long Xiang's character. He also thought highly of him. In his opinion, the imperial preceptor was being so overbearing. He was nitpicking and purposely suppressing him. However, he could not say this out loud. He still had to take care of the imperial tutor's face and dignity. Therefore, he could only bring up Long Xiang's past performance and hope that the imperial tutor would not pursue this matter. However, the imperial tutor had no intention of letting Long Xiang go. He said firmly, Your Majesty, it's because you are too kind and think too much about your past relationships that you connive with these treacherous officials, causing them to become more and more rampant. In the long run, not only will your prestige be destroyed, the foundation of the heavenly dragon divine palace will also be in danger. Long Xiang was enraged when he heard this. His face was ashen and he said coldly, Lord Imperial Preceptor, this general is not worthy of being called a treacherous minister. I believe that I am loyal and have a clear conscience. This is the only way I can live up to your Majesty's expectations. If Imperial Tutor insists on slandering me, I would rather commit suicide to prove my sincerity. Long Xiang had no power to resist the powerful Imperial Tutor. However, he would never grovel and beg for peace, nor would he admit to these unfounded accusations. He would rather die to prove his innocence. The imperial tutor looked at him from the corner of his eyes and sneered contemptuously. You can't deny it in front of the evidence, so you resorted to such shameless means? Since you are so stubborn, I would like to see. The more they argued, the more tense it became. If they continued to argue with Long Xiang's stubborn personality, he might really commit suicide on the spot. Seeing this, Dark North could only pretend to be angry. With a dignified expression, he slammed the table and suppressed the matter. In the end, Dark North wasn't able to give Long Xiang any rewards. In order to appease the imperial tutor, Dark North could only take a step back. He verbally reprimanded Long Xiang and fined him 10 years of his salary. Although this punishment was very light, it was neither painful nor itchy. However, a loyal general who had made meritorious contributions and risked his life for the Dragon Emperor ended up like this instead of making any contributions. It was really disappointing. Long Xiang was also filled with grievances. His heart was filled with sorrow. But he understood that the Dragon Emperor was in a difficult situation, and he knew that the Dragon Emperor still trusted and valued him, so he didn't say anything. In this confrontation, the imperial tutor won without a doubt. The study returned to silence. Long Xiang continued to report the results while Dark North and the imperial tutor listened attentively. After what happened just now, Long Xiang was in low spirits. His report also became very short and boring. After he finished his report, Dark North gave him a few words of encouragement to comfort him. The imperial tutor was too lazy to listen anymore and waved his hand to chase Long Xiang away. At this moment, Long Xiang hesitated for a moment before he mustered up the courage to say something else. Your Majesty, the Oceanic tribe of the Trench tribe is very sinister and cunning. We don't know how they found out about our plan. Previously, I led 3,000 soldiers into the Trench tribe's territory to investigate, and we were besieged by the Oceanic tribe's army. We suffered heavy casualties and only 800 people were left. We were about to be slaughtered by the Oceanic tribe's army. At the most dangerous moment, Senior Tianxing passed by the sea and saved us. He killed thousands of the Oceanic tribe's army in an instant and forced the Oceanic tribe's army to flee in panic. Long Xiang gave a simple account of what happened. Dark North listened with great interest. His eyes shone with a strange light. He was very interested in the senior Tianheng that he was talking about. The imperial tutor was expressionless and his eyes were gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. After Long Xiang finished, the imperial tutor frowned and asked in a deep voice, Long Xiang, you actually brought an unknown person into the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace and arranged for him to stay in your residence? What are you trying to do? Do you still have the laws of the Divine Palace in your eyes? Long Xiang was about to explain when Dark North waved his hand and said, Imperial tutor, please calm down. Young Master Tianxing saved the lives of General Long Xiang and 800 soldiers. General Long Xiang knows how to repay a debt of gratitude. It's normal for you to bring him back. The imperial tutor snorted and said no more. Seeing Dark North's attitude, Long Xiang took the opportunity to say, Your Majesty, I didn't bring young Master Tianxing here to repay a debt of gratitude. Young Master Tianxing is here to visit you. He has something important to discuss with you. Is that so? Dark North raised his eyebrows and asked doubtfully, But I don't know a deity king named Tianxing. Where did he come from? Does he know me? Long Xiang answered honestly, I only know that he came from the Star Source continent and has something important to discuss with you. I don't know anything else. Maybe you can ask him in person. Without waiting for Long Xiang to finish, the imperial preceptor interrupted him with a sneer and scolded, Bastard. A guy with an unknown background wanted to meet the Dragon Emperor? Who does he think he is? And you, Long Xiang, who gave you the right to bring a stranger into the Divine Palace? If that kid has ulterior motives and purposely gets close to the Dragon Emperor or even tries to assassinate him, can you bear the responsibility? Long Xiang was speechless. He could only say, If someone tries to assassinate His Majesty, I will do my best to stop them. Even if I have to sacrifice my life, I will protect His Majesty. The imperial preceptor snorted disdainfully. Is your life worth mentioning in the same breath as His Majesty's safety? Long Xiang was speechless and ignored the imperial tutor. He bowed to Dark North and begged, I've been with Senior Tianxing all this time. I dare to risk my life for him. Senior Tianxing will never try to assassinate His Majesty. Your Majesty, please grant me the honor of meeting Senior Tianxing. The Emperor's preceptor hurriedly took a step forward and bowed to Dark North. He rushed to say, Your Majesty, your safety is related to the entire Heavenly Dragon continent. It's also shouldering the life and death of hundreds of millions of people. You can't take any risks and you can't give the villains any chance to take advantage of you. I suggest that you immediately give the order to expel that person from the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace. The imperial preceptor's tone was sonorous and his attitude was very firm, revealing an unquestionable feeling. Even though Dark North felt that it was inappropriate, he couldn't help but hesitate. He was stuck in a dilemma. After weighing the pros and cons for a long time, he said with a guilty face, "General Long Xiang, I've ordered my men to prepare a gift for you to thank young Master Tianqing. After that you can send him away." Chapter 3853. It was obvious that Dark North felt that he had already made the Imperial Preceptor take a step back in the matter of punishing Long Xiang. In that case, there was no need for him to accommodate Long Xiang when it came to the matter of young Master Tianqing meeting him. Since young Master Tianqing was Long Xiang's savior, he would prepare a generous gift for young Master Tianqing. Then Long Xiang would send young Master Tianqing out of the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace. It should be a good and reasonable decision. Long Xiang also understood this point. He could not find any fault with Dark North's decision. Even if he was unhappy that he could not help Senior Tianqing, there was nothing he could do about it. He could not continue to pester Dark North and force him to change his mind. Feeling wronged and disappointed, Long Xiang bowed to Dark North and the Imperial Tutor and left the study with a gloomy expression. The Imperial Tutor stayed in the study and complained to Dark North for a long time before leaving angrily. As for the content of his complaints, it was obvious that he was blaming Dark North for being too kind and hated the treacherous officials and rascals for going too far. Usually, it would only take Long Xiang 100 breaths to return to his residence from the Dragon Emperor Divine Palace. However, tonight it took him half an hour to return. After returning to his residence, he did not immediately go to see Ji Tianqing. Instead, he sat quietly in his room for a long time. 6 hours later, when the sun rose, he stood up and went to see Ji Tianqing. At the same time, the guard commander under the Dragon Emperor's command brought the gift that Dark North had prepared. The guard commander handed the sandalwood box to Long Xiang and left. Long Xiang carried the sandalwood box and went to see Ji Tianqing alone. He wanted to ask the guard to inform Ji Tianqing and invite him to the living room. However, when he entered the living room, he found Ji Tianqing already waiting for him. "Senior Tianqing, why are you here? Did you not rest last night?" Long Xiang was stunned for a moment and asked in a concerned tone. Ji Tianqing smiled and said calmly, "When I heard your conversation with the guard commander, I guessed that you would come, so I waited for you here." Only then did Long Xiang feel relieved. After exchanging a few pleasantries with him, he presented the sandalwood treasure box. "Senior Tianheng, I've already told His Majesty the Dragon Emperor about what happened last night and why you're here. This is a gift specially prepared by the Dragon Emperor to express his gratitude to you." As he spoke, Long Xiang placed the gift box in front of Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing sat in his chair without moving. He didn't even look at the gift box as his lips curled into a smile. He asked, "Baiming doesn't plan on meeting this king, right? After giving this gift box, you will be ordered to send this prince away, right?" Long Xiang's hands froze in midair. He suddenly felt awkward. "Senior, so you've already guessed it?" His face was full of guilt as he smiled bitterly. "Please forgive me, Senior. It is my fault for not being able to help you." Ji Tianqing wasn't disappointed nor angry. He asked calmly, "Is it because Baiming doesn't want to meet this king, or did someone dissuade you?" Long Xiang was speechless again. He didn't know how to answer. Although the Imperial Tutor was very dissatisfied with him and deliberately suppressed him. However, this was an internal matter of the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace. He didn't want Senior Tianqing to know. No matter what, Senior Tianqing was an outsider after all. Moreover, he hadn't known him for long, so he couldn't completely trust him. Most importantly, he didn't want to see Senior Tianqing become enemies with the Imperial Tutor because of this matter. That wouldn't be a good thing for Senior Tianqing. Seeing Long Xiang's expression and reaction, Ji Tianqing guessed the answer. He waved his hand and said, "All right, this king won't ask you anymore to avoid making things difficult for you. How about this? Help this king one last time. Go and report to Baiming that Long Tian is here to visit. Other than that, no matter what happens, it has nothing to do with you." Long Xiang subconsciously nodded and said, "All right. Then I'll help Senior one more time. Please wait here for a moment." He had already made up his mind. Even if he would be attacked by the Imperial Tutor and angered the Dragon Emperor, he would help this one more time. After all, Senior Tianqing was his savior. Although he said that he would never forget his kindness, it wasn't his style to not help this small matter. However, when Long Xiang turned around and walked to the door of the living room, he suddenly reacted. He was stunned. He turned around and looked at Ji Tianqing. He asked doubtfully, "Senior Tianqing, you just said, your name is Long Tian? Ji Tianxing nodded. Long Xiang's eyes widened, revealing an expression of shock and disbelief. He asked, "You're the legendary Long Tian from Star Source Continent, the one who defeated the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor?" Ji Tianxing's expression was indifferent as he nodded again. Long Xiang was even more shocked. His blood and heartbeat sped up. He asked with a trembling voice, "It's rumored that you were the only disciple of Dragon Emperor Feng Tian. Is this true?" Ji Tianxing's expression remained unchanged as he continued to nod. "Oh my God!" Long Xiang was completely stunned. His eyes shone brightly as he stared at Ji Tianxing for a long time. He couldn't believe that the mysterious expert who created a miracle, rewrote the history of the Dragon Realm, and snatched the position of Dragon Emperor, was actually right in front of him. That's right, the major event that happened in Star Source Continent could be said to be world-shaking. As early as a year ago, the news had spread out of Star Source Continent and to several other continents. For the past 3 years, Long Xiang had been active in the southeastern coastal area. Of course, he had heard many rumors. To him, a legendary expert like Long Tian was a high and mighty existence that he could only look up to. He was actually able to travel together with Long Tian for an entire month. This was a great fortune. After a while, Long Xiang finally calmed down. Senior Long Tian has become the Dragon Emperor of Star Source Continent. Now that he has come to Sky Dragon Continent and wants to meet the North Dark Dragon Emperor, he even said that he has something important to discuss. It seems that the matter between the two Dragon Emperors must be related to the situation of the world. It's definitely something big. Long Xiang's expression suddenly changed. He hurriedly bowed and said, "Senior Long Tian, please wait here for a moment. I'll go and report it." After that, he turned and left as fast as he could and rushed to the Dragon Emperor's divine palace. Looking at his expression, Ji Tianxing couldn't help but frown. He muttered to himself, "I didn't say anything." What did he understand? After 20 breaths, Long Xiang was as fast as lightning and appeared outside the Dragon Emperor's study room excitedly. "Reporting to your Majesty, I have something important to report." Long Xiang didn't have time to let the guard pass the message. He shouted loudly at the door of the study room. In the study room, the Imperial Tutor was discussing government affairs with North Dark Dragon. Suddenly they heard Long Xiang's anxious shout. The two stopped talking and frowned. "This bastard. Haven't you chased that person away? How can you be so flustered and make such a big fuss? Where is your decency?" The Imperial Tutor was angry. He turned and opened the door of the study room. He was about to reprimand Long Xiang. Chapter 3854. However, Long Xiang ignored the Imperial Tutor and went straight to Dark North's desk to greet him. After a simple bow, he said in a hurried and forceful tone, "Your Majesty, that Senior Tianhong's real name is Long Tian." "That's right. He's the one who defeated the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor and took over the position of Dragon Emperor. He asked me to tell you that he has something important to discuss with you." Long Xiang didn't beat around the bush and explained Long Tian's identity and purpose in brief. The study fell into silence. Dark North and the Imperial Tutor were stunned as they stared at Long Xiang. The Imperial Tutor even forgot to reprimand him. After a long while, Dark North and the Imperial Tutor regained their senses. Their reactions were very different. Long Tian? He's the one who destroyed the Xuanji Grotto Heaven, took over the position of Dragon Emperor and took over the Star Source Continent? Dark North was filled with shock and excitement. His eyes shone with a bright light. He did not have any relationship with the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor. Of course, he did not think that Ji Tianxing was a traitor. In this world where the strong were respected, he admired Long Tian, who dared to resist and successfully challenged authority. However, the Imperial Tutor frowned. His face darkened and his eyes shone coldly. He was on high alert as if he was facing a great enemy. He asked in a low voice, "Long Tian? Isn't he the only disciple of the heaven-sealing Dragon Emperor? He came to the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace? What does he want?" Long Xiang was still immersed in shock and excitement. He didn't quite understand what the Imperial Preceptor meant. He subconsciously replied, "Senior Long Tian must be here to discuss something very important with the Dragon Emperor." He said it himself. "Get out." The Imperial Tutor turned around and glared at Long Xiang. Long Xiang was stunned. He did not understand why the Imperial Tutor was so angry. However, Dark North realized something and said to Long Xiang, "General Long Xiang, please wait outside the study. I have something to discuss with the imperial tutor. I'll summon you later." Long Xiang didn't know what was good for him, so he could only bow and leave the study. It wasn't until he left the study and stood under the vermilion eaves that he suddenly came to his senses and his expression changed on the spot. Senior Long Tian is the only disciple of the Heaven's Sealing Dragon Emperor. He is also a peak godly king who defeated the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor. Our Dragon Emperor took over the position of Heaven Sealing Dragon Emperor 1,000 years ago. Could it be that Long Tian has come to His Majesty to... Suddenly thinking of this, Long Xiang shuddered and shuddered. At this moment he suddenly understood why the imperial tutor's expression was so ugly. However, he quickly calmed down and calmed himself down. He muttered to himself, "It shouldn't be possible. Senior Long Tian was not that kind of person and he would definitely not do such a thing. If he really wants to assassinate the Dragon Emperor and seize the throne, then I can only atone for my sins with my death. But he came here alone. How could he possibly take the risk to assassinate someone?" Long Xiang was very nervous. He was afraid that Long Tian was here to assassinate him, but he kept reminding himself to trust Long Tian's character. At the same time, a similar conversation was going on in the study. "Your Majesty, I've said before that Long Tian purposely approached Long Xiang and sneaked into the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace. He must be up to no good. He has been plotting against the Heaven's Sealing Dragon Emperor in the Starry Origin continent. He has wreaked havoc in the Starry Origin continent and plunged the people into misery and suffering. Now he has sneaked into the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace to assassinate you and seize the Dragon Emperor's throne. We can't tolerate a villain like him. We must immediately mobilize a large number of troops and kill him on the spot." The imperial tutor was filled with killing intent as he growled. Dark North sat restlessly on the armchair. He frowned and said in a low voice, "Long Tian is the only disciple of the Heaven's Sealing Dragon Emperor. He is also the rightful successor. It's not impossible for him to get rid of me and take back the throne that originally belonged to him." "Yes. It's good that you think that way." The imperial tutor quickly nodded in agreement. Dark North continued, "However, the Heaven's Sealing Dragon Emperor treated me as his nephew. I have met Long Tian a few times and we have a good relationship. Even if he wants to take back the throne, he can talk to me face to face. Why would he try to assassinate me? Moreover, if he wants to assassinate me, why would he come here alone?" Seeing that Dark North still did not believe him, the imperial tutor became anxious. He said in a low voice, "Your Majesty, have you forgotten? It is said that when Long Tian attacked the Xuanji Grotto, he sneaked in alone. After he entered the Xuanji Grotto, he released thousands of elites from the divine item that he carried with him. That was how he managed to catch the Xuanji Grotto off guard. He might do the same thing again this time. It's too late. I will order the Imperial Guards to gather and close the entrance of the grotto." "Wait." Dark North quickly stopped the Imperial tutor. He shook his head and said, "He arrived last night. However, a night has passed. Is there anything unusual in the Heavenly Palace? Furthermore, this Emperor believes that with his character he won't kill us. After all, this is the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace. It is the place where he used to live. It is also his master's painstaking effort." The imperial tutor was completely speechless. Seeing that Dark North was so stubborn, he could not help but stomp his feet. But he is a peak divine king. Once he tries to assassinate us, who can stop him? Dark North frowned and thought for a while. He said calmly, "I have no enmity with him. What reason does he have to assassinate me?" He sighed. The imperial tutor was completely helpless. He was filled with resentment as he left. Bam! The door of the study was slammed shut. His heavy footsteps also left quickly. Long Xiang, who was in the corridor, saw the imperial tutor leave with a pale face. He guessed that the imperial tutor had quarreled with His Majesty again. After hesitating for a while, he mustered the courage to open the door of the study and walked to Dark North's imperial desk. "Your Majesty, Senior Long Tian is waiting at my residence. Do you think—" Dark North sat on the armchair with his eyes closed. He rubbed his forehead with a complicated expression. Hearing Long Xiang's voice, he waved his hand and said, "You may leave first. I need to think about this carefully." Long Xiang also understood that Long Tian's identity was complicated and special. His Majesty had not made up his mind to see him or not. It was useless for him to stay in the study. He could not force His Majesty to make a decision quickly, right? He could only bow and leave the study. However, Ji Tianxing was still in his residence, waiting for his news. Given the current situation, he was too ashamed to go back and see Ji Tianxing. Therefore, Long Xiang wandered aimlessly outside the Dragon Emperor Immortal Palace. And at this time, the Imperial Preceptor had already secretly given the order to mobilize a large number of Imperial Guards and God King experts to quietly assemble. In a short 2 hours, there were 1,000 High Divine Lord Realm Imperial Guards and more than 30 Divine King experts secretly gathered in a certain palace. Then, under the lead of the Imperial Tutor, they rushed to Long Xiang's residence with murderous intent. Chapter 3855. Although more than 30 God Kings and over 1,000 Imperial Guards were puzzled by the sudden transfer order, they didn't know what to do. They did not understand why the Imperial Tutor would make such a big move when there was nothing wrong with the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace. The Imperial Tutor said righteously in the face of everyone's doubts and questions. Long Tian, the evil thief who brought chaos to the Astral Source continent, had sneaked into the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace with the help of Long Xiang. This person intends to assassinate the Dragon Emperor. His intention is to be executed. Although the Dragon Emperor is kind and benevolent, we must not let the evil thief's scheme succeed. With his explanation, all the God Kings and Imperial Guards came to an understanding. The Imperial Tutor had been careful when he was gathering the troops. The 1,000 Imperial Guards and 30 God Kings that he had gathered were all old officials of the North Sea Dragon King Palace, or those who had joined the Dragon Emperor 1,000 years ago. None of them were old officials of the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace from 1,000 years ago. Although Dark North had taken over the thousands of experts under the Heavenly Dragon Emperor after he succeeded the throne. But the Imperial Tutor had used all kinds of methods to transfer those people out of the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace and sent them to different parts of the continent. In short, those thousands of old officials of the Heavenly Dragon Emperor could not be put in an important position, let alone stay in the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace. For the Dragon Emperor, kill. The Imperial Tutor was filled with killing intent as he roared in a low voice. The 1,000 Imperial Guards and the numerous godly kings all roared furiously as well. After that, the Imperial Tutor led the troops to Long Xiang's residence. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. Everyone moved quickly. In just 15 minutes, they had landed around the soaring dragon palace and surrounded the entire palace. The God Kings and the Imperial Guards formed a battle formation. They wielded their swords and sabers as if they were ready to fight. The guards of the soaring dragon palace were dumbfounded. They did not understand what was going on. Everyone, what are you doing? What did our general do wrong? Why did he provoke the Imperial Guards to search his house? Everyone, there must be some misunderstanding. The guards panicked and immediately went to report to the Flying Dragon Special Forces. However, Long Xiang was not in the palace, so they could only report to the 2 deputy generals. There were also 2 more quick-witted bodyguards who wanted to sneak out of the palace and report to the Flying Dragon Special Forces. However, several divine kings discovered them and captured them on the spot, throwing them back to the palace's plaza. The Imperial Tutor swaggered into the palace with a few Imperial Guard commanders and shouted, "We are here on the orders of His Majesty, the Dragon Emperor. We are here to capture the traitor Long Tian. All unrelated personnel are to leave." Hearing that this matter had nothing to do with the Flying Dragon Special Forces, the guards and bodyguards immediately retreated to the side and kept quiet out of fear. However, the Imperial Tutor and a few Imperial Guard commanders entered the palace and searched around for a while, but they did not find any trace of Long Tian. The commanders of the Imperial Guards were enraged. They ordered their men to capture the guards and soldiers and brought them to the square in front of the palace. Soon, over 100 guards and 200 soldiers gathered in the square and lined up neatly. "Where is Long Tian? Who can tell me where Long Tianzong is? Anyone who doesn't report it will be killed without mercy. Anyone who helps Long Tian hide will be punished according to the crime of treason." The commanders of the Imperial Guards held their swords and shouted with murderous intent. The guards and soldiers were confused. They did not know what was going on. Only the 2 deputy generals had complicated expressions and were inwardly anxious. Soon, the guards guarding the palace's entrance could not withstand the Imperial Guard commander's pressure and interrogation. They told the truth in front of everyone. "Commander, that white-robed young man left just 30 minutes ago. He left through the palace's entrance. We don't know where he went. He is the general's guest. We did not dare to stop him, nor did we dare to ask where he went." Hearing these answers, the commanders of the Imperial Guards were filled with regret. The Imperial tutor's expression was even more gloomy. His eyes shone with a cold light as he sneered. "He escaped before we surrounded this place? That traitor indeed has ulterior motives and is plotting against us." After saying that, the Imperial tutor gave orders to the Divine Kings and Imperial Guard commanders. "Long Tian has sensed that something is wrong and has escaped. However, I have already ordered the Grotto Heaven's entrance to be closed. He can't escape. Let's go and capture him now. We will catch him soon." The Divine Kings and close to 1,000 Imperial Guards quickly gathered. After forming a team, they followed the Imperial tutor into the sky and rushed towards the Grotto Heaven's entrance. At the same time, the Imperial tutor sent out a few jade slips to continue to mobilize his troops. He wanted to mobilize more than 10,000 Imperial Guards and 10 high-level Divine Kings to besiege Long Tian. He would not let Long Tian escape from the Grand Mystery Grotto Heaven. He had to kill him in the Grotto Heaven. Zhou Xian. The Imperial tutor and the 1,000 Imperial Guards came and left in a hurry. Soon they disappeared into the sky. The guards and soldiers of the Soaring Dragon Palace came to their senses. They looked at each other and did not know what to do. The two deputies did not dare to delay. They quickly sent a message to Long Xian to report the situation. Long Xian was strolling outside the Dragon Emperor's divine palace. He was feeling uneasy. A moment ago he seemed to have noticed a group of Imperial Guards flying across the sky 100 miles away. There seemed to be the aura of a divine king in his Soaring Dragon Palace. He was puzzled and wanted to rush back to see what was going on. At this moment, a jade slip flew from the sky and landed in front of him. When he read the message in the jade slip, his expression changed drastically. He rushed into the Dragon Emperor's divine palace without hesitation and rushed to the Dragon Emperor's study. Bam! The heavy door of the study was pushed open by Long Xian. He did not care about offending the Dragon Emperor's dignity. He rushed in without reporting and shouted anxiously, "Your Majesty, something big is going to happen. The Imperial tutor has gathered more than 1,000 Imperial Guards and more than 30 Divine Kings. They have surrounded my residence and are going to besiege Senior Long Tian." Dark North was still sitting on the armchair. He was frowning and pondering if he should meet Long Tian. If they met, how should they talk? If Long Tian wanted to harm him, how could he protect himself? If Long Tian wanted to take back the Dragon Emperor's throne, could he give it up? Suddenly he heard Long Xiang's shout. He was immediately awakened and stood up. "What did you say? The Imperial tutor has surrounded your residence and is going to besiege Long Tian?" "Yes." Long Xiang quickly nodded and explained, "But Senior Long Tian has already left my residence. The Imperial tutor has led his troops to chase after him." Dark North frowned and shouted anxiously, "How can the Imperial tutor be so reckless? Long Tian's intentions are still unclear. If he hastily besiege him, it will definitely lead to a disaster." Everyone knew that Long Tian had not stated his intentions. If the Imperial tutor hastily attacked him, it would be self-defeating and they would become enemies for no reason. With the current strength of the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace, the consequences of fighting with a Divine King would be unimaginable. Even if the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace won, the consequences would be tragic. Dark North quickly gathered his guards and rushed out of the study with Long Xiang. He wanted to stop the Imperial tutor personally. Chapter 3856. Outside the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace, there was a mountain range 100,000 miles to the south. Ji Tianxing, dressed in a white robe and empty-handed, was strolling in the air above the mountain range, stepping on the sea of clouds. He was not in a hurry at all and strolled leisurely. He looked like he was taking his time, but he was actually waiting for the Imperial tutor and the others to catch up. Previously, when he was waiting for news in the Soaring Dragon Palace, he had been secretly observing the movements in the Dragon Emperor Divine Palace. When the Imperial tutor deployed his troops, he had already sensed that something was wrong. When the Imperial tutor led a large group of Imperial Guards to the Soaring Dragon Palace, He left the soaring dragon palace and flew all the way south. When he arrived above the mountain range, he slowed down and strolled leisurely. He wanted to see how much enmity the Ice Dragon King had towards him. And how would the Dragon Emperor North Sea deal with this matter? Although he and North Sea had known each other for more than 1,000 years, they could be considered friends. But he was not naive enough to think that North Sea, who had been the Dragon Emperor for more than 1,000 years, would still call him brother. He wanted to see how the Imperial Tutor and North Sea reacted, to see if the two of them were putting on a show. It would not be too late to decide what to do next. With this thought in mind, Ji Tianxing waited patiently in the sea of clouds. Not long after, a dazzling divine light flew over from the northern sky. There were many figures approaching quickly. Ji Tianxing looked over calmly and saw that there were more than 1,000 people in the divine light. The leader was a skinny old man in a black robe. He was emitting terrifying killing intent and chilling intent. Behind him were 35 immortal kings. Most of them were intermediate and lower immortal kings. Only 3 of them were upper immortal kings. Behind the immortal kings, there were 5 groups of imperial guards. There were more than 1,000 of them, and they were all fully armed with armor and swords. They rushed over with killing intent. After locking onto Ji Tianxing with their divine senses, they sped up. He's there. He hasn't escaped yet. Catch him. Everyone speed up. We can't let him escape. The God Kings called out as they led the 1,000 imperial guards into the air above the mountains. They formed an encirclement in the sea of clouds. In a short period of time, a huge encirclement was formed, trapping Ji Tianxing inside. Everyone was holding onto their swords and sabers, eyeing Ji Tianxing covetously. They were all ready to jump at any moment. The 30 God Kings spread out and occupied various advantageous positions in the encirclement. They could surround and attack Ji Tianxing at any time. The Imperial Tutor led the other 5 God Kings through the sea of clouds, approaching Ji Tianxing step by step. Long Tian, I've long guessed that you were up to no good. Now that your tracks have been exposed and you've fled for fear of punishment, you've been caught by me. Why don't you surrender now? The Imperial Tutor stood tens of thousands of feet in front of Ji Tianxing, his black robes fluttering in the wind as he exuded a powerful aura of majesty. The other 5 God Kings also glared angrily at Ji Tianxing, releasing the aura of a God King expert. They appeared especially domineering and domineering. Ji Tianxing was not affected at all. He remained standing in the sky calmly, sizing up the Imperial Tutor and the others with a faint sneer on his face. As for the 1,000 Imperial guards, he didn't even put them in his eyes and completely ignored them. Finally, his gaze landed on the Imperial Tutor. He asked, Ice Ghost Dragon King, whether it was in the North Sea Dragon King Palace or now in the Sky Dragon Divine Palace, I have no enmity with you. I came to see Dark North because I had something important to discuss, but you didn't even meet me. Instead, you surrounded me with such fanfare. This prince would like to ask, is this your idea, or was this ordered by Dark North? The Imperial Tutor frowned and said coldly without hesitation, of course it's my decision. It's my duty to share His Majesty's burden. You traitor, not only did you bring chaos to the Starsource continent, you even came to the Sky Dragon continent to assassinate His Majesty and bring disaster to the Sky Dragon continent. His Majesty is merciful and wants to give you a chance to refute. However, I have to be responsible for His Majesty's safety and will not give you a chance to take advantage of it. Ji Tianxing sneered and shook his head in disdain. He asked, do you think that I came back to the Sky Dragon continent to assassinate Dark North and snatch the Dragon Emperor's throne? Is that not the case? The Imperial Tutor retorted. He shouted angrily, don't try to quibble and don't even think about deceiving everyone. Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and sneered. He asked again, since you know that I defeated the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor and snatched the Dragon Emperor's throne of the Starsource continent, why did you ask me? Then who gave you the confidence and courage to attack this prince? The Imperial Preceptor was taken aback. The 30-odd God Kings and the 1,000 Imperial Guards all revealed looks of fear. Seeing that everyone was hesitating, the Imperial Tutor quickly raised his arms and shouted righteously, Long Tian. So what if you are powerful? Don't even think about making us submit. We are all loyal and righteous people. For the safety of His Majesty and the safety of the Sky Dragon continent, we would rather die in battle than let you go. The Imperial Tutor's expression and tone revealed his impassioned emotions. He looked as if he was ready to lay down his life for Long Tianlang. The other supreme gods and imperial guards were touched. Their blood and lofty sentiments were ignited. They raised their arms and shouted in agreement. Yes, we are all ready to die. For His Majesty, for the people of the world, we would rather die than submit. Stop talking nonsense with him. Everyone, let's kill him. Everyone has the right to kill a traitor with ulterior motives. Amidst a wave of shouts, the imperial preceptor pulled out an ice-blue divine sword and made an attacking gesture with his sword. Instantly, the thousands of imperial guards and 30 over supreme gods brandished their swords and sabers. They activated their divine power and used all sorts of skills to surround and attack Zhi Tianxing. Suddenly, a dazzling divine light lit up a radius of 30,000 miles. The extremely violent divine power fluctuations caused the divine power in the area to become chaotic. A storm started to blow out of nowhere. Before anyone could use their skills, a terrifying pressure had already gathered in the area and pressed down on Zhi Tianxing. As the leader, the imperial tutor looked confident on the surface, but he was actually feeling uneasy. He had a feeling that the supreme gods and imperial guards around him would very likely become cannon fodder and pay a terrible price. It would not be that easy to capture or kill Long Tianlang. However, something that no one expected happened. Just as the imperial guards and supreme gods were about to unleash their skills, and the imperial tutor was momentarily dazed, Zhi Tianxing suddenly vanished. Without any warning, not even a flash of divine light, he just vanished into thin air. Everyone was stunned as a thought flashed through their minds. Could it be that Long Tianlang is not his true body but an illusion? Before anyone could think about it, another frightening scene appeared. Whoosh! Long Tian suddenly appeared behind the imperial tutor and casually threw a punch at the imperial tutor's back. Translator: Timothy Underfeder, Globeglotter. Chapter 3857. Boom! A deafening muffled sound exploded. The dark golden fist slammed into the imperial tutor's back, causing blood to splatter everywhere. The imperial tutor fell forward, blood spurting out of his nose and mouth as he groaned in pain. His back caved in and at least 6 or 7 dragon bones were shattered. There was a hole in his black robe and the armor he was wearing also had a hole in it and a few cracks appeared on it. The surrounding god kings and imperial guards were all dumbfounded. No one would have thought that Long Tian's strength was actually so tyrannical, his speed swift to such an extent. He had already injured the imperial tutor before the others could even use their ultimate skills. On top of that, he merely threw out a punch and didn't use any profound techniques. A dignified 9th stage god king, the imperial tutor who was closest to the peak god king, was seriously injured just like that. Was this the strength of a peak divine king? It was too terrifying. As this thought flashed through his mind, the divine abilities of more than 1,030 people were finally unleashed. Swish, 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 swish. All of a sudden, the sky was flooded with the radiance of swords and sabers, as well as the light of divine spells. However, before the overwhelming attacks of divine spells arrived, Zhi Tianxing had already grabbed the heavily wounded imperial tutor and disappeared from the sky. Rumble! Amidst the earth-shattering rumbles, divine spells bombarded the ground, turning thousands of miles of land into ruins. Dust was flying everywhere and the energy was raging, but Zhi Tianxing and the imperial tutor were nowhere to be seen. A while later, when the dust and divine light had dispersed, a god king suddenly discovered Zhi Tianxing's tracks. Look, there they are. This high-level divine king was the vice commander of the imperial guards. He was an 8th-layer divine king. Everyone looked in the direction he was pointing and saw 2 figures above the sea of clouds 30,000 miles away. A black figure was wrapped in golden light and seemed to be unable to move. The other white figure was constantly waving his palm and flicking his finger, sending out rays of sword light that slashed at the black figure's body. Even though they were 30,000 miles away, the god kings could still feel the sharp sword intent of the sword light. In fact, the crowd could even vaguely see the black figure trembling non-stop as blood splattered out one after another. Damn it! He actually captured the imperial tutor. That damned thief, he is torturing the imperial tutor. Everyone, let's attack together. We must save the imperial tutor. Over 30 god kings let out cries of grief, indignation, and humiliation. They hurriedly led nearly 1,000 imperial guards to save the imperial tutor. At the same time, in the northern sky, there was another dazzling divine light that was hurtling over. Within the dazzling divine light, there were also more than 1,000 figures. They were all wearing armor and wielding swords and sabers. The leaders of the Imperial Guards were over 20 God King experts. Among them there were 4 High God Kings. Clearly, this group of God Kings and Imperial Guards was summoned by the Imperial Tutor after he discovered that Long Tian had escaped. They flew across the sky at lightning speed. After seeing the situation clearly, they quickly met up with the first group of Imperial Guards and rushed to save the Imperial Tutor. After the 2,000 Imperial Guards and 60 God Kings met up, they quickly surrounded Ji Tianxing and the Imperial Tutor. At this moment, everyone could clearly see that the Imperial Tutor, who was imprisoned by the golden light, was already covered in wounds and dripping with blood. He looked extremely miserable. Not only had his divine crown fallen off, his hair was disheveled and his clothes were tattered. His body was also covered with wounds that were so deep that his bones could be seen. However, he was restrained by more than 10 rays of golden light. He could not use his divine power to resist, nor did he have the strength to struggle. What shocked everyone the most was that every time Ji Tianxing stabbed the Imperial Tutor with his sword light, he would ask in a dignified tone, "Do you admit to your crimes? Do you still not know your crimes? Are you still not repentant?" Clearly, Ji Tianxing was using torture to extort a confession. He was deliberately torturing the Imperial Tutor to force him to admit to his crimes. The 60 God Kings and the 2,000 Imperial Guards were all dumbfounded. Everyone looked at each other, their eyes filled with confusion. They even began to whisper to each other. "What's going on? How despicable! How dare Long Tian humiliate the Imperial Tutor like this? Long Tian is actually using torture to extort a confession? What crime is he asking the Imperial Tutor to admit to? What crime did the Imperial Tutor commit?" In their confusion, everyone actually forgot to rescue the Imperial Tutor. They did not dare to act rashly. At this moment, Ji Tianxing saw that all the God Kings and Imperial Guards had arrived. He said loudly, "Everyone, please be our witnesses today. Let's see if the Imperial Tutor dares to admit to his crimes. He is arrogant and disregards the authority of the Dark North Dragon Emperor. He is overstepping his authority and using public resources for his own personal gain. He has even taken over the authority of the Dark North Dragon Emperor. Without the approval of the Dark North Dragon Emperor, he can mobilize all the soldiers and do whatever he wants. How can the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace prosper with such treacherous officials? How can the authority of the Dark North Dragon Emperor be used to govern the world? Tell me, don't you think this sinful official deserves to be executed?" Ji Tianxing's powerful voice reverberated in the sky. It was deafening. The 2,000 Imperial Guards and 60 God Kings were stunned. For a moment no one said a word. They vaguely felt that something was wrong. It was as if the atmosphere had changed. However, they could not tell what was going on. No one took the lead to refute or save the Imperial Tutor. Everyone was silent and did not dare to act rashly. Only some of the braver Imperial Guards began to whisper among themselves. "Aren't we here on the orders of the Imperial Tutor to kill the criminal who tried to assassinate the Dragon Emperor? Yeah. How did it turn into Long Tian interrogating the Imperial Tutor in front of everyone and forcing him to confess? This, what should we do? Shouldn't we do something? That Long Tian, did he really try to assassinate the Dragon Emperor? Why didn't I hear anything?" Seeing that the Imperial Guards and God Kings did not react, the severely injured Imperial Tutor was so angry that his lungs almost exploded. Incomparable humiliation and anger made him look hideous. He glared at the crowd with bloodshot eyes and roared, "You bunch of bastards, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and kill Long Tian and save me. He is the criminal who tried to assassinate the Dragon Emperor. He is deliberately humiliating me and framing me." Since the Imperial Tutor's authority had been destroyed and he had lost all face, he could not admit to his crimes. He had to deny it. Seeing the Imperial Tutor's reaction, Ji Tianxing sneered and said, "Ice Dragon King, do you see that? This is what they mean by, those who are unjust are doomed to destruction. You have always been in charge and used to deceiving your superiors and subordinates. These Imperial Guards have long harbored resentment against you. It is only because of your domineering power that they did not dare to speak up. Now that I have exposed your evil nature, who will go against their conscience to save you?" Bah. You damned bastard, you are slandering me. The imperial tutor was so angry that he roared in a hoarse voice. Chapter 38:58. The imperial tutor had been publicly humiliated and tortured by Ji Tianxing. He had even been accused of disrespecting the Dragon Emperor. He was so angry and humiliated that he almost went berserk. However, the God Kings and Imperial Guards were confused as they watched Ji Tianxing put the Imperial tutor on trial. They did not know what to do. From Ji Tianxing's actions, it did not seem like he was going to assassinate the Dragon Emperor. Instead, it seemed like he was helping the Dragon Emperor get rid of a traitor. Everyone knew how arrogant and domineering the Imperial tutor was. It was just that no one dared to say it out loud. Some of the God Kings and Imperial Guards who had been bullied by the Imperial tutor were secretly delighted to see the Imperial tutor in such a tragic state. Under such a complicated situation, of course, no one would take the lead to save the Imperial tutor. Moreover, everyone knew that Long Tian was a peak God King. Even the Imperial tutor, who was a 9th-tier God King, was like a puppet in Long Tian's hands. Who would dare to attack Long Tian? Wouldn't that be courting death? The atmosphere in the sky was getting more and more awkward. The Imperial tutor's screams were getting louder and louder. At this moment, several beams of divine light shot over from afar and rushed into the field as fast as lightning. Stop. Long Tian, stop now. Before the beams of divine light arrived, a majestic male voice could be heard. The 2,000 soldiers of the Imperial Army and 60 God Kings immediately regained their confidence when they heard this voice. Everyone stopped talking and bowed in unison. They shouted, "Greetings, Your Majesty, Dragon Emperor." Obviously, Dragon Emperor North Sea had arrived with his men. Behind Dark North, several God King powerhouses followed closely. It was precisely Long Xian and the 4 protectors. The 4 guardians were extremely loyal to North Sea. Their status was much higher than that of the Imperial Guards. They were North Sea's most loyal bodyguards. Hearing North Sea's shouts, Ji Tianxing also retracted his right hand and stopped torturing the Imperial tutor. The Imperial tutor, who was on the verge of death, immediately burst into tears when he saw North Sea. He was so excited that he felt like he had just been given a new lease of life. Your Majesty, you're finally here. Quickly kill Long Tian. Quickly kill this bastard. The Imperial tutor was as excited as if he had seen a life-saving straw. His expression was rather comical. However, the atmosphere in the hall was so heavy that no one dared to laugh. Even Ji Tianxing couldn't be bothered to laugh at the Imperial tutor anymore. Instead, he frowned and looked at Dark North. We haven't seen each other for more than 1,000 years, and this is how you treat your old friend? Ji Tianxing's voice was very calm, but there was a trace of coldness and dissatisfaction in his tone. Dark North also stared at him. After sizing him up a few times, he sighed. You've changed. Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and said expressionlessly, You have an additional goatee compared to before, why can't I change? The God Kings and Imperial Guards in the surroundings became rather stunned when they heard the conversation between the two of them. The Imperial tutor, who was shackled by the golden light and covered in wounds and blood, was even more dumbfounded. He could not help but roar. Your Majesty, now is not the time for you to reminisce about the past. Long Tian's ambitions are already clear. Why aren't you giving the order to capture him? Actually, what the Imperial tutor really wanted to say was, Can't you save me first before wasting your breath on Long Tian? Even though he was suppressing his anger, he did not express his true thoughts. However, his expression, tone, and choice of words when he roared at Dark North had gone way overboard. This was definitely not the attitude an Imperial tutor should have toward the Dragon Emperor. It was like an elder reprimanding a junior. Dark North was not the only one who frowned. Even the surrounding God Kings and Imperial Guards felt that the atmosphere was not right. They felt very awkward for the Dragon Emperor. The Imperial tutor probably also felt that he had lost his composure, so he quickly shut his mouth and said no more. Dark North ignored the Imperial tutor and continued to stare at Ji Tianxing. He asked, You don't believe me and are angry? Not only did Ji Tianxing frown, but the surrounding God Kings and Imperial Guards were also stunned. The Dragon Emperor had always referred to himself as Your Majesty. Why did he refer to himself as Your Majesty in front of Long Tian? Did this mean that the Dragon Emperor and Long Tian had some secret relationship? If that was the case, wasn't it ridiculous that the Imperial tutor said that Long Tian wanted to assassinate the Dragon Emperor? At this thought, The God Kings and Imperial Guards all had strange looks in their eyes. They looked at the Dragon Emperor Ji Tianxing and the Imperial Tutor. No one knew what they were thinking. Ji Tianxing frowned and looked at Dark North. He said, "Do you think that I should not be angry? Or do you think that your act with the Ice Turtle Dragon King is flawless?" Dark North could only smile bitterly and sigh. He said, "I knew that you would think that way." Long Xiang quickly explained, "Senior Long Tian, you have really misunderstood His Majesty. This is definitely not an act. This is a misunderstanding." Dark North waved his hand and gestured for Long Xiang to stop talking. He looked at Ji Tianxing and said sincerely, "This is not the place to talk. Can you release the Imperial Tutor first and we can talk somewhere else?" Seeing Dark North's attitude towards Ji Tianxing, the Imperial Tutor was furious. However, he also knew that if he continued to cause trouble he would have to suffer more pain and humiliation. Now he could only pray that Long Tian would release him immediately and end this humiliation. Luckily Ji Tianxing gave Dark North some face. He waved his hand and released the golden light that imprisoned the Imperial Tutor. Swish, swish, swish. After a flash of light, the Imperial Tutor regained his freedom. He did not bother to treat his injuries and flew away as if he was escaping. He only stopped when he was thousands of miles away. He quickly circulated his energy to treat his injuries and cursed, "Long Tian, I will remember today's humiliation. Just you wait." After saying that he turned around and flew back to the Divine Sword Peak to treat his injuries. Dark North then ordered the 4 great guardians and Long Xiang, "Everyone go back to your duties. Do not discuss this matter." The 4 great guardians, Long Xiang, the Divine Kings and more than 2,000 Imperial Guards bowed and said yes. After that, everyone left in an orderly manner and returned to the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace. Only Dark North and Ji Tianxing were left in the sky. Dark North extended his hand and said, "Long Tian, please follow me." After that he brought Ji Tianxing across the sky and rushed to the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace. 15 minutes later, the two landed in the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace and entered the Dragon Emperor's personal study. However, Dark North did not take a seat. Instead he opened a secret door on the inner wall of the study. He brought Ji Tianxing through the secret door and entered a dark secret room. Ji Tianxing looked around and found that the furnishings in the secret room were extremely simple. There were 2 golden prayer lamps on the wall and an old futon on the ground. There was a small altar in front of him with a statue on top of it. The 3-foot-tall statue was very lifelike. It was a white-haired old man with a sage-like demeanor. He gave off an aura of benevolence, wisdom and love. Ji Tianxing took a look and recognized the statue. It was his master, the heaven-sealing Dragon Emperor. There were 2 small dents on the old futon under the altar. It was obvious that it was caused by kneeling for a long time. Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and asked expressionlessly, "So, you brought me here to show that you have never forgotten your roots and have never forgotten your master's teachings?" Bookhouse Reading Website. Chapter 3859. Of course. Dark North did not hesitate as he replied with certainty. After that he knelt on the praying mat again and kowtowed 3 times to the statue of the Heavenly Dragon Emperor on the altar. Ji Tianxing keenly discovered that there was actually a shallow dent in the incomparably hard black stone slab where he had kowtowed. This was not something that could be formed in 3 to 5 years. After Dark North bowed, he returned to his original position and made an inviting gesture to Ji Tianxing. The 2 of them left the secret room and returned to the study room. They sat down and started to talk. "Long Tian, I apologize to you for what the Imperial Tutor did. Please do not take it to heart." Before they started to talk, Dark North bowed to Ji Tianxing to express his apology. Ji Tianxing accepted it calmly and asked, "If you were not the one who ordered this, why are you apologizing?" Dark North explained with a solemn expression. "After Flying Dragon reported your identity and intentions, I didn't even have time to think of how to face you before Imperial Preceptor led his troops to hunt you down. This matter has nothing to do with me whether you believe it or not." Ji Tianxing already had an answer in his heart and did not continue to dwell on this matter. He said, "Since it was the Ice Dragon King's decision and he has received the punishment he deserved, I will not make things difficult for him." Dark North heaved a sigh of relief and sat back on the chair. He sighed and said, "I have not seen you for more than 1,000 years. I don't know what kind of opportunity you had to reach the peak from the 4th degree realm. And I have not made any progress in the past 1,000 years. I still have not reached the peak. Ji Tianxing said calmly. The position of the Dragon Emperor is indeed prestigious and unparalleled, but it is not that easy to sit on. After becoming the Dragon Emperor, you have to deal with endless government affairs. Where will you find the time to cultivate? That's true. Dark North nodded in agreement. But after nodding, he realized that Ji Tianxing's words had a hidden meaning. Therefore he pondered for a while before asking, so, after you defeated the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor and became the Dragon Emperor of the Starry Origin continent, you are not in a hurry to take control of the situation. That you came to me. Why is that? Ji Tianxing did not beat around the bush and answered straightforwardly. Controlling the Star Source continent and managing billions of people in the 100 realms is a laborious task. I don't have the leisure and time for that. Professional matters should be left to professionals. I just want to do my own thing well. I'm here to look for you. Firstly, I want to revisit this place and look for memories. Secondly, I want to ask for your help. However, Dark North was already mentally prepared. He guessed that Ji Tianxing's so-called important matter might have nothing to do with the Dragon Emperor's position, much less snatch it from him. However, Ji Tianxing's straightforwardness still surprised him. You want my help? With your current strength, what else do you need my help with? Ji Tianxing shook his head and explained, it has nothing to do with my strength. I just want you to help me find someone. Say it. Dark North nodded and said sincerely, as long as it is within my power, I will do my best to help. Ji Tianxing explained, I want to find a human youth called Wu Hen. He is my son. He was rescued by a peak divine king more than 10 years ago. He briefly described Wu Hen's characteristics and the process of his disappearance. Dark North noted it down. He then nodded and said, I've never seen or heard of this youngster Wu Hen that you're talking about. However, I can use the power of the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace to search and investigate in the Heavenly Dragon continent. If you are sure that he was rescued by a peak divine king, I will send a message to the Green Phoenix old ancestor of the Xianxia Grotto Heaven. I believe you know that she is the only peak divine king in the entire Heavenly Dragon continent. Green Phoenix old ancestor? Ji Tianxing frowned and thought for a while before saying, although this possibility cannot be ruled out, the probability of her rescuing Wu Hin is not high. Firstly, she is not of the dragon race and does not seem to be good at the dragon race's secret techniques. Secondly, she has always been living in seclusion in the Xianxia Grotto Heaven and does not care much about worldly affairs. Dark North nodded in agreement and said, whether it is or not, I have to send a message to be at ease. Alright, thank you. Ji Tianxing clasped his hands and expressed his gratitude. Dark North was not hypocritical. He took out a communication jade slip on the spot and sent a message to the Green Phoenix old ancestor in front of Ji Tianxing. Although the Green Phoenix old ancestor was high in seniority and powerful, she did not care about worldly affairs and kept a very low profile. But the Xianxia Grotto Heaven was one of the 3 top forces in the Heavenly Dragon continent. As the Dragon Emperor, Dark North would of course keep in touch with the Xianxia Grotto Heaven. After sending the message, the next step was to wait for the Green Phoenix old ancestor's reply. If the Green Phoenix old ancestor was cultivating in seclusion, she should not send a message in a short time. Ji Tianxing and Dark North were clear about this, so they would not wait aimlessly and continue to talk about other issues. Although you have inherited the position of the Dragon Emperor, I have no interest in this position, and I should not meddle in other people's business. But this continent is after all the painstaking efforts of my master to protect it. This Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace is also the cave where my master has lived all her life, and it was also once my home. Ji Tianxing looked at Dark North and said calmly, I don't want to see an incompetent person who occupies the position of the Dragon Emperor, but can't even protect the foundation of my master. Dark North was judged as an incompetent person. He frowned a little unhappily, but he was not angry because of this. He stared at Ji Tianxing and asked, what do you want to say? Ji Tianxing said expressionlessly, although I have not been back to the Heavenly Dragon continent for long, and I have not deliberately investigated anything. But I can find a few people to inquire about the current situation of the Heavenly Dragon continent, as well as your current situation. You can imagine the problem between you and the Heavenly Dragon continent. To what extent has it reached? It is a little exaggerated to say that everyone knows about it, but the disappointment and criticism of you among the people is an indisputable fact. Dark North's expression was a little gloomy. After a moment of silence he said in a low voice, "You are right, I have not done well. But don't worry, this is only temporary. I will continue to work hard to protect the foundation of the heavenly dragon ancestor." Tianxing shook his head and said in a firm and dignified tone, "No, it is not that you are not qualified, and it is not that you are not working hard enough. Ever since you ascended the throne, you have been working hard and conscientiously. This is something that everyone can see, and it is an achievement that cannot be erased. You are not a peak divine king, and you do not have the deterrent power of my master. This is human nature, but it is not the main reason for the situation to deteriorate. The real problem is that you do not know how to judge people and you do not know how to use them. I think you know in your heart that as long as the Ice Dragon King is in a high position, and he is still bossing you around and often overstepping his boundaries, then you will never be able to govern this continent well. If you do not get rid of him, the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace will not be peaceful, and the entire continent will not be able to live in peace." Chapter 3860. Longtian, how could things be as serious as you say? Dark North immediately frowned and waved his hand repeatedly. "Don't exaggerate and frighten me with alarmist words. Although the imperial tutor was a petty man and led his troops to hunt you down and made you unhappy, he was still cautious. However, he was also taking precautions. He was worried about my safety, which was why he acted rashly." Tianxing also furrowed his brows and said in a deep voice, "I just said that he's already been punished. I won't bother about this matter anymore. I'm talking about how you don't know how to use people. The Ice Dragon King is arrogant and domineering, using public resources for his own personal gain. He has caused the officials to be divided and the people to complain. If you don't get rid of him, your empire will collapse." Dark North was also anxious. He quickly explained, "Aren't you just trying to scare me? Back in the days at the North Sea Dragon King Palace, Uncle had always supported me. Whether it was teaching me cultivation since I was young or planning for me later on, he had always poured his heart and soul into me. After I became the Dragon Emperor, he even did his best to share my burdens. I don't know how much criticism and grievances he had suffered, but he never complained. He knew that I was busy dealing with government affairs, so he took up the responsibility and helped me lighten my burden. Tell me, Uncle has treated me so well. How can I kick him to the curb after he has outlived his usefulness? Wouldn't such an ungrateful act be despised by the people and go down in history as a byword?" Seeing Dark North's attitude, Tianxing was even more dissatisfied. He asked, "Do you really think so, or are you just playing dumb?" Dark North was silent for a while. He could only sigh and say, "Longtian, since you know my current situation, you should also know that there are too few people I can entrust with important tasks. I am not a peak divine king, so I don't have the ability to gather followers. Uncle has always been impatient. He hasn't changed even after 20,000 years. Usually he gives people the impression that he is arrogant and domineering. Not to mention how much effort he has put in to share my burdens. I can't do anything to harm him. Even if I'm willing to bear the infamy and get rid of him, who can I rely on?" Seeing that Dark North was still being stubborn, Tianxing did not say anything more. He sneered and said, "Expanding the territory does indeed require the support of powerhouses, but governing the world is not necessarily the same. Since you insist that there is no problem with the imperial tutor and still insist on doing things your own way, then let me be the bad guy." Hearing the last sentence, Dark North jumped to his feet and shouted anxiously, "Long Tian, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to assassinate the imperial tutor?" Tianxing shook his head and said with an indifferent expression, "This king is a peak divine king, the master of the Starsource continent. Why would I assassinate a nobody? Then what exactly do you want to do?" Dark North heaved a sigh of relief, but he was still puzzled. Tianxing got up and left. When he reached the door of the study, he said, "Since you don't want to believe the truth, then I can only think of a way to force you to believe it." Dark North was stunned. He vaguely guessed something, but he could only sigh helplessly. Tianxing left gracefully and disappeared at the end of the corridor outside the study. At the same time, in the Imperial Tutor's palace on the Divine Sword Peak, in a dark secret room, the Imperial Tutor had just consumed a few king-grade divine pills to suppress his injuries and heal his external wounds. Hence he got up and left the secret room. Accompanied by 2 of his trusted guards, he went to the main hall to discuss matters. Outside the main hall, there were dozens of elite guards on guard. It was heavily guarded. In the brightly lit main hall, There were already 18 Divine King experts waiting respectfully. When they saw the Imperial Tutor walk in, they all bowed and greeted him. The Imperial Tutor suppressed his anger and walked to the main seat with a gloomy face. He looked around and saw that his loyal subordinates were all in the hall. He said straightforwardly, "Send a message immediately and gather the 24 divine generals guarding the various regions. Ask them to lead the elites back. Long Tian, that damned thief bastard. Even if tens of thousands of elites and the power of the entire Taishan Grotto heaven, I will tear him into pieces and burn his bones to ashes. If I can't step on him under my feet, I won't be able to get rid of the hatred in my heart." The Imperial Tutor's tone was cold as he gritted his teeth and cursed. The 18 high-ranking God Kings all acknowledged the order in unison. However, there were soon people who raised their doubts and concerns. Lord Imperial Tutor Long Tian and His Majesty the Dragon Emperor are old friends. They seem to be on good terms. Isn't it a little inappropriate for us to gather such a large number of troops? If we anger His Majesty and he wants to protect Long Tian, what should we do? A middle-aged divine king in black armor asked worriedly. The Imperial Tutor shouted with a ferocious expression, "You are afraid of angering His Majesty, but aren't you afraid of angering me? You just need to carry out your orders. I will take care of everything." "I understand." The middle-aged divine king cupped his fists and bowed, then quickly returned to the group. Another white-haired old man stepped out and cupped his fists. "Lord Imperial Tutor Long Tian is a peak divine king after all. If we fight him head-on, we don't have much of a chance of winning. Even if we can defeat him, if he insists on escaping, I'm afraid we won't be able to trap him." The Imperial Tutor frowned and sneered with a ferocious expression. "Are you all stupid? I've already failed once. Why would I make the same mistake again? This time the 24 divine generals are bringing back reinforcements. We must secretly return to the Taishan Grotto heaven. I've already thought of a plan. First I'll frame Long Tian. Then I'll think of a way to surround and kill him. As for the specific plan and action, I still need everyone to brainstorm and fill in the details for me. As long as we plan well, no matter how strong Long Tian is, he won't be able to escape." Hearing the Imperial Preceptor's words, the 18 God Kings felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted off their shoulders. They all revealed knowing smiles. Next, the Imperial Tutor revealed a sinister smile and told everyone about his scheme and plan. After the 18 Divine Kings heard it, they all nodded in agreement. Many of them even took the opportunity to flatter him and express their admiration. However, the Imperial Tutor not only needed to listen to flattery, he also needed to listen to everyone's suggestions. Soon, everyone expressed their opinions and perfected and improved the Imperial Tutor's plan. After nearly an hour of discussion, the Imperial Tutor's plan was improved to perfection. Every step was closely linked and filled with murderous intent. After discussing the action plan, everyone bowed and bade farewell. They left the meeting hall one after another to carry out their mission. The Imperial Tutor also left the hall in satisfaction and returned to the secret chamber to continue healing his injuries. Not long after, the meeting hall regained its silence. At this moment, a transparent figure flew out from the corner of the hall and left silently. This figure flew across the night sky and landed in the soaring dragon palace without alerting anyone. When he returned to the secret chamber and showed himself, he was holding a fist-sized crystal ball in his hand. This mysterious crystal ball was a mid-king level divine item. It had a special effect and was called the Shadow-Retaining Ball. Everything that had happened in the conference hall of the Divine Sword Peak had been recorded by the Shadow-Retaining Ball. Do you think trash like you can fight with me?" The white-robed youth kept the Shadow-Retaining Ball and sneered disdainfully. Chapter 3861. Without a doubt, the white-robed young man was Ji Tianxing. Previously, he had tortured the Imperial Tutor in front of everyone and humiliated him. The Imperial Tutor was so humiliated that he went crazy. Furthermore, he had said ruthless words in front of everyone and was bound to take revenge. Ji Tianxing did not care about it, but after a heart-to-heart talk with Dark North, he changed his mind. Dark North was very stubborn. He was determined not to get rid of the Imperial Tutor, not even to remove him from his position. The Imperial Tutor's authority was too great, and he had a vengeful personality. Of course, Ji Tianxing had to be on guard against him. Therefore, after leaving Dark North's study, he quietly rushed to the Divine Sword Peak and hid in the dark to spy on the Imperial Tutor. Reality proved that he had guessed correctly. The imperial tutor had indeed gathered his loyal subordinates to discuss his conspiracy and plan in the main hall. Tianxing concealed his tracks and aura. He hid in a corner of the main hall and used a shadow sphere to record everything that happened in the main hall. Since he already knew about the imperial tutor's conspiracy, he naturally would not fall for it. At the same time, he would not sit still and wait for death. Tell Long Xiang to come see me. I have something important to discuss. Tianxing summoned the guard at the door of the secret chamber and instructed him. The guard bowed and accepted the order, then quickly turned and left. Not long after, Long Xiang hurriedly rushed over. After he entered the secret chamber and bowed, Tianxing asked straightforwardly, "Has the imperial tutor been suppressing you, trying to expel you from the heavenly dragon divine palace and transfer you to a peripheral region?" Long Xiang was stunned. He frowned and did not answer. Tianxing continued, "You should know that the imperial tutor's arbitrary and tyrannical behavior will only weaken the prestige of the heavenly dragon divine palace. In the long run, the situation in the heavenly dragon continent will become more and more chaotic, and it will eventually lead to a disaster." Long Xiang was also well aware of this, but he was unwilling to discuss it with Tianxing. Now that the other party was an old friend of the Dragon Emperor, he had no ill intentions towards the heavenly dragon divine palace. Long Xiang gradually let down his guard and didn't reject the topic. He asked, "Senior Long Tian, what do you want to say?" Tianxing stared at him and said solemnly, "You are very loyal to the Dragon Emperor, and you can't resist the oppression of the imperial tutor. But this prince believes that you are not a fool. You must have already collected evidence of the imperial tutor's crimes. Not only you but the other generals and commanders are also dissatisfied with the imperial tutor, right?" Long Xiang furrowed his brows and pondered for a moment before saying with a bitter smile, "Senior Long Tian, you are right. I, along with the other generals and commanders, have long been dissatisfied with the imperial tutor's actions. We have also collected evidence and even advised His Majesty. However, all of this was useless. His Majesty's attitude was very firm. He would never be ungrateful and get rid of the imperial tutor. On the contrary, after our advice was heard by the imperial tutor, our situation became even worse." He paused for a moment before continuing, "I can understand Senior's feelings. I also know that you want to get rid of the imperial tutor and get rid of this scourge. However, I have to advise you that this is futile. You should give up." "You don't have to worry about this." Tianxing waved his hand and said, "This time, you don't have to do anything. This prince will handle this matter. You only need to give me the evidence of your crimes as well as the evidence of the other generals and commanders." Long Xiang's eyes lit up. He was a little tempted. He thought to himself, "Our words carry little weight and are not enough to persuade His Majesty. Senior Long Tian's identity is special. Perhaps he can change His Majesty's mind." Thinking of this, he nodded and agreed, "Senior, please wait for a moment. I will go and contact everyone to collect the evidence." Tianxing instructed, "You must be fast. You must complete it within 2 days at the latest." Time is so tight." Long Xiang frowned and revealed a difficult expression, "It's fine on my side. I have a lot of evidence and can hand it over to you soon. However, the other generals and commanders are either out on missions or have been transferred to remote areas." Tianxing instructed, "Send messages through jade slips for those who are far away. You just need to collect as much evidence as possible." "Okay, I will do my best." Long Xiang nodded with pressure. Before leaving, he couldn't help but ask, "May I know why Senior is in such a hurry? Why is time so tight?" Tianxing naturally wouldn't tell him that the imperial tutor had already begun to mobilize his troops and would launch an attack in 2 or 3 days. For this kind of matter, the sooner the better. This is to prevent the imperial tutor from being on guard. Long Xiang accepted this explanation and didn't ask any more questions. He hurriedly went to carry out his mission. Tianxing remained in the secret chamber to cultivate. He released his invisible divine sense to secretly envelop the heavenly dragon divine palace and monitor everyone's movements. Time passed silently. Long Xiang was very efficient. In just 1 day he sent 4 pieces of evidence to Tianxing. One of them was the evidence he had collected over the years. The other 3 pieces of evidence came from 2 generals and a commander of the imperial army. Those 2 southern conquering generals had the same status as him. They were once young and powerful, invincible generals who could command troops like gods. However, their style of doing things was more straightforward and fiery. They had offended the imperial tutor even more. Now that they had been trapped in the heavenly dragon divine palace for more than 200 years, they had been suppressing their anger for a long time. These 4 pieces of evidence came from the Grand Mystery Cave Heaven, so it was very fast. Ji Tianxing flipped through the 4 pieces of evidence. Each piece of evidence was clear and conclusive. He kept them in his spatial ring. Next, the generals and commanders that Long Xiang contacted were all not in the Grand Mystery Cave Heaven. They were either out on missions or sent to remote areas. They were already far away from the center of power. Long Xiang suddenly sent a message to them. Not only did he have to explain the cause and effect, he also had to persuade them to send back the evidence as soon as possible. This was indeed very difficult. After all, those generals and commanders also needed to carefully consider before they could make a decision. After they made a decision, they also needed time to organize the evidence of the imperial tutor's crimes. Therefore, it was not realistic to expect a result in one day. Long Xiang was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. He paced back and forth in the study. Every once in a while he would send a message to the generals and commanders, urging them to speed up. Ji Tianxing was calm. He sat in the secret chamber and silently monitored the movements in the heavenly dragon divine palace. He could clearly see that the God King experts under the imperial tutor were also busy sending and receiving jade slips. From the reactions of the God Kings, their conspiracy and plan were progressing smoothly. Ji Tianxing calculated the time. The 24 god generals that the imperial tutor had gathered should have arrived at the Grand Mystery Cave Heaven through the various teleportation arrays in the continent. From the looks of it, the imperial tutor would take action in at most one day. At the same time, some of the imperial tutor's god kings and divine lord guards had also sneaked into the soaring dragon palace to prepare to frame the imperial tutor. Chapter 3862. 2 days had passed and the 3rd day had arrived. It was the darkest hour of the day. Long Xiang was still urging the generals and commanders, but they seemed to have not made a decision, or perhaps they had not sorted out the evidence. At this time Ji Tianxing found him. The time has passed, there's no need to rush them. The evidence in their hands is not important. After meeting, Ji Tianxing went straight to the point. Long Xiang, who was full of anxiety and nervousness, was stunned. He subconsciously asked, "Senior, we only have 4 pieces of evidence. Can't you wait for one more day? One more day and they will definitely make a decision and send the evidence in their hands over." Ji Tianxing waved his hand and said, "There's no need for that. If Dark North has the determination and courage to make a decision, the 4 pieces of evidence in our hands will be enough for Dark North to execute the imperial tutor. If Dark North still wants to protect him and is not willing to cut off his losses, even if we gather another 40 pieces of evidence, it won't be enough." Long Xiang was stunned again. He stared blankly at Ji Tianxing, not knowing what to say. After a moment of silence he asked, "Senior, what should I do next?" Ji Tianxing patted him on the shoulder and said, "Stay in the secret room and cultivate. Don't do anything else and wait patiently for one day. Also, don't let anyone know that I have left. Make everyone believe that I am still recuperating in the secret room." Long Xiang immediately understood that Long Tian was about to make a move. He was a little excited and hurriedly asked, "Senior, are you sure you can do it?" Seeing that he was so nervous, excited and worried, Ji Tianxing smiled and said, "What we need to do is to let Dark North see the truth and bear the pain of getting rid of the imperial tutor. Only through this can he wake up, and it will be very beneficial for him to manage the heavenly dragon continent in the future. If he still refuses to wake up, it will be easy for me to clean up the mess for him." Long Xiang frowned and asked, "But senior, other than the imperial tutor, there are many people under the Dragon Emperor's command. They are all evil, deceiving their superiors and incompetent people." Ji Tianxing smiled and said, "As long as the imperial tutor is eliminated, the other tumors are no longer a concern. Dark North will gradually find a way to eliminate them." "I understand." Long Xiang nodded and bowed respectfully. "Although senior is powerful, I hope that senior will pay attention to your safety. After all, the thieves were treacherous, and they had all kinds of vicious schemes that were impossible to guard against. If this matter succeeds, I and countless righteous people will forever remember senior's kindness." The millions and millions of people of the Heavenly Dragon continent should also remember your great kindness. Ji Tianxing waved his hand disapprovingly and said, "Don't speak so righteously. This prince is not that noble. I just don't want to see Master's life's work and foundation destroyed in the hands of incompetent people. I also don't want to see my former home and residence occupied by a disgusting reptile." Long Xiang was stunned again and was full of doubts. Ji Tianxing did not explain any further. He turned and left, and his figure gradually became transparent. It was not until he disappeared into the darkness that Long Xiang came to his senses and suddenly understood. So, Senior Long Tian lived on the Divine Sword Peak when he was in the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace? I vaguely remember that the Divine Palace on the peak was called the Divine Sword Palace. Later the Imperial Tutor changed it to the Imperial Tutor Palace. After understanding this point, Long Xiang suddenly felt that this excessively powerful and excessively young Senior Long Tian was actually a sentimental person. After lamenting for a while, he gathered 2 deputy generals and a few guards and solemnly said to them, "Senior Long Tian has been recuperating in the secret chamber. You must guard the secret chamber well and not let anyone disturb him. Also, I will be in seclusion to heal my injuries. Other than the Dragon Emperor and Senior Long Tian, no one is to disturb me." The 2 deputy generals and a few loyal guards immediately bowed and accepted the order. After making all the arrangements, Long Xiang returned to the secret chamber to rest. At the same time, without anyone's knowledge, Ji Tianxing entered the Dragon Emperor Divine Palace in an invisible state. The lights were still on in the Dragon Emperor Baiming's study room. Baiming, who was wearing a golden robe and a divine crown, was still focused on reading the memorials and handling the official affairs of the various regions. As a 9th-degree realm divine king, the greatest benefit was that he did not need to eat, sleep or rest. He could work without sleep for a few hundred years. The study room was very quiet. Only the sound of Baiming's breathing and the rustling of the imperial brush on the memorials could be heard. At this moment, Ji Tianxing's figure quietly appeared in the study room and stood in front of Baiming. He was not in a hurry to speak. He still concealed his divine power and sat on the chair in front of the study table. The imperial brush in Baiming's hand stopped abruptly. He slowly raised his head and looked at Ji Tianxing with a frown. "Why are you back again? Why did you come to look for me in the middle of the night?" Baiming's voice was very soft and his tone was rather calm. There was no anger in it, only a little puzzled. Ji Tianxing waved his hand and shot out a few rays of divine light to set up a soundproof array to strengthen the defense of the study room. Then he laughed softly and said, "Why? I want to stay in the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace for a few more days to see the scenery of my old home. Can't I? Old ancestor Qing Wan hasn't replied and you're in such a hurry to chase me away?" Baiming stopped what he was doing and looked at him seriously. Maybe old ancestor Qing Wan is in seclusion and won't be able to reply in a short period of time. Once she has any news, I will definitely send a message to inform you. You're being so mysterious and sneaky. What are you trying to do? Ji Tianxing shrugged and said indifferently, "Nothing, I just want to invite you to watch a show." "Show?" Baiming frowned. After a moment he guessed something and asked, "Are you referring to the Imperial Tutor?" Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and asked, "What did he do in the past 2 days? You can't be unaware, right?" Baiming nodded and said, "Although I didn't monitor his actions, I don't need to see to know that he will definitely try to take revenge on you. After all, you humiliated him until he was black and blue. With his personality, how can he swallow his anger?" "Then you don't plan to stop him?" Ji Tianxing revealed a playful smile. Baiming smiled. "With your strength, I should be worried about the Imperial Tutor. Moreover, I thought you had already sensed it and should have left the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace in advance." Ji Tianxing could only spread his hands and sneered, "If that's the case, then you can treat me as if I don't exist and continue with your work. One day later I will have a good talk with you." "Do as you wish." Baiming frowned and continued to write and read the memorials. Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 3863. Ji Tianxing and Dark North were both powerful individuals with high statuses. Many things did not need to be said. Both of them knew what was going on. For the next day the two of them did not talk at all. They pretended that the other did not exist. Dark North was busy dealing with government affairs and did not even look at Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing also remained silent. He sat on a chair by the window and closed his eyes to rest. He hid his aura. Even if someone used their divine senses to check outside the study, they would not be able to sense his presence. When the messenger guard and the commander of the Imperial Army entered the study to report to Dark North, he entered stealth mode and completely disappeared. Just like that, no one except Dark North discovered him for the entire day. Finally, a day passed. Night fell again. In the soaring dragon palace, two carefully disguised guards secretly met in a secluded alley. The two of them did not show any expression but secretly communicated with each other through voice transmission. The Imperial Tutor is ready. How is the situation here? Long Tian has been in the secret room. He has not come out or left. What about Long Xiang? Long Xiang is also recuperating in the secret room. No one is allowed to disturb him. What about the items? Have they been placed? Of course they have been completed long ago. Alright, then you wait here. I will inform the Imperial Tutor now. After a short conversation, the two of them quickly separated and disappeared into the courtyard of the palace. About 15 minutes later, in the study of the Dragon Emperor Dark North. Dark North was still busy dealing with government affairs. Xianxia was still sitting by the window pretending to be invisible. Suddenly, hurried footsteps came from outside the study. The Imperial Tutor's angry voice was also heard. Your Majesty, something has happened. As the Imperial Tutor's voice sounded, the door of the study was pushed open rudely. The Imperial Tutor, dressed in a black robe and emitting a cold aura, strode into the study. Another 4 god kings followed behind him, but they stopped at the entrance of the study, guarding the 2 sides of the door. Dark North put down the imperial brush in his hand and secretly glanced at Xianxia, who was by the window. He thought to himself, is this the start of your so-called show? Of course, Xianxia had already concealed himself and concealed his aura. He had completely disappeared. Dark North frowned imperceptibly. Only then did he raise his head to look at the Imperial Tutor and ask with a frown, Imperial Tutor, why are you in such a panic? The Imperial Tutor didn't notice anything strange, nor did he expect there to be a third person in the study. He said angrily, Your Majesty, I've been in seclusion to heal my injuries for the past 2 days. Although this old man is worried that Long Tian, that dog with ulterior motives, will take advantage of this opportunity to wreak havoc in the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace. However, this old man was busy treating my injuries and was unable to personally patrol and strengthen the defenses. And just a moment ago, the 2 commanders guarding the treasury urgently reported that the treasury had been stolen. Not only were resources worth tens of billions of divine stones stolen, even our supreme profound array disk was stolen. Hearing this sudden news, Dark North was also startled for a moment. His eyes flashed with intense anger. However, he immediately reacted and guessed something. The anger in his eyes quickly disappeared. He pretended to be shocked and revealed an expression of disbelief. He asked loudly, Forget about those cultivation resources, how could the Supreme Profound Array disk be lost? That's the core of the Supreme Profound Cave Heaven's Divine Array, the key that controls all the great arrays. Quickly tell me, when was the treasury stolen? Dark North's reaction was reasonable and was within the Imperial Tutor's expectations. The Imperial Tutor quickly replied, This old man was also very shocked when I heard this news. I quickly asked the 2 commanders. They said that it was stolen a few hours ago. However, the treasury's defensive array, door and passage were all intact and there were no traces of damage. Even the treasury's interior didn't leave any clues. From this, it can be seen that the thief's strength is very high, and his goal is very clear. To be able to quietly sneak into the treasury without destroying the king-grade divine array, quickly steal the resources and supreme profound array disk without leaving any clues. Even this old man can't do it. The Imperial Tutor's meaning was very clear. Dark North guessed the Imperial Tutor's next move and looked guiltily at the windowsill. Although the chair under the windowsill was empty, Dark North knew that Long Tian must be sitting there looking at him with a cold smile. Imperial Tutor, don't make blind guesses now. Investigate the truth first. Dark North pretended to be calm and said in a dignified tone. Seeing that everything was as expected, the Imperial Tutor sneered in his heart and said angrily, Your Majesty, don't worry. As soon as this old man received the news, he sent all the commanders and generals of the Imperial Army to investigate everywhere in the palace and look for clues. The Supreme Profound Cave Heaven has been closed by this old man long ago. That evil thief must still be in the palace. The imperial tutor was almost roaring at Dark North. The evil thief who stole the resources and treasures was that bastard Long Tian. However, Dark North maintained his natural performance and had an attitude of, I know, but I won't say it out loud. Okay, send the order to lock down the entire palace and search with full force. The imperial tutor was stunned for a moment and waved his hand. Your Majesty, there is no need to lock down the palace. This old man has already sent all the men to investigate. I believe there will be results soon. Please wait patiently for a moment. When he said this, the imperial tutor's tone was very confident. Dark North nodded and waited in the armchair. However, he was complaining in his heart. Imperial tutor, even if you want to frame me, please act more seriously. So perfunctory, so straightforward. At the same time, the soaring dragon palace, which was originally peaceful, was suddenly invaded by a large group of imperial guards led by 4 King of God realm commanders. A total of more than 300 imperial guards quickly surrounded the soaring dragon palace and controlled all the exits and passages. The guards and soldiers who were awakened were immediately restrained by the imperial guards and could not move. 2 imperial guards and dozens of imperial guards went straight to the guest room where Ji Tianqing was staying and searched inside for a while. Then the 2 imperial guards found a white jade treasure box from a secret compartment in the wall. Found it. It is indeed here. The 2 commanders of the imperial army shouted excitedly. They hurriedly took the white jade box and left Soaring Dragon Palace. Not long after, the 2 imperial guards brought the white jade treasure box to the Dragon Emperor's study. Your Majesty, the Great Mystery Array Disc has been found. I am here to report. 2 marshals of the imperial army bowed outside the study and loudly reported their arrival. Without waiting for Dark North to speak, the imperial tutor hurriedly let the 2 imperial guards into the study and presented the white jade treasure box to Dark North. The square white jade treasure box was placed on the desk. Dark North cast a spell to open it, and the treasure box lit up with golden light. An ancient bronze array disc the size of a palm was lying quietly in the treasure box. This was the core and key of the Grand Mystery Cave Heaven, the Great Mystery Array Disc. Chapter 3864. Dark North felt a little embarrassed. After all, the imperial tutor's acting was a little clumsy. And Long Tian remained invisible, sitting on the windowsill and watching coldly. Dark North felt his cheeks burning, guessing that his face must be red. But he couldn't expose it for the time being, so he could only pretend and say with a face full of joy, "It's fortunate that the Supreme Mystery Array Plate can be found." The imperial tutor frowned and said in a low voice, "But Your Majesty, the resources worth tens of billions have not been found yet." Dark North waved his hand and said disapprovingly, "It's just some cultivation resources, it's no big deal. If you lose it, then lose it." When the imperial tutor saw that he was pretending to be confused and was clearly protecting Long Tian, he immediately became angry. "Your Majesty, this matter must be investigated to the end. Those cultivation resources and Supreme Mystery Array Plate, do you know where they were found?" Dark North revealed an "I don't want to know" expression, picked up the imperial brush and prepared to continue working. The imperial tutor pointed at the 2 imperial guards and shouted angrily, "You two, tell His Majesty the Dragon Emperor, how and where you found the Supreme Mystery Array Plate." The 2 imperial guards pretended to be terrified, looked at Dark North with a troubled expression, and then looked at the imperial tutor, looking like they wanted to say something but hesitated. Dark North was expressionless, thinking in his heart, "These 2 guys act more realistically than you, imperial tutor." The imperial tutor shouted angrily again, "Speak quickly. As long as you report truthfully, what's there to be afraid of?" The 2 imperial guards gritted their teeth and made up their minds, reporting the situation one by one. Reporting to His Majesty the Dragon Emperor, 12 of US led 2,400 imperial guards and searched for 4 hours. This was found in a guest room in General Long Xiang's mansion. "We asked the guards of Long Xiang Palace. Long Tian is staying in that guest room. We found this Supreme Mystery Array Plate from a secret compartment in the wall. There was also a small spatial array set up in that compartment in order to hide it from others." After the 2 of them finished speaking, the imperial tutor's face was filled with hatred. He said to Dark North, "Your Majesty, the truth has been revealed. This was Long Tian's doing. This old man has long said that Long Tian has ulterior motives. He wants to get rid of you and take back the heavenly dragon divine palace. You didn't believe it before, but now that the evidence is conclusive, are you still going to turn a blind eye? Seeing how overbearing the imperial tutor was, Dark North could no longer feign ignorance. He could only put down his brush and dismiss the two imperial army marshals. When there was only him and the imperial tutor left in the study, not counting the invisible Zhou Xian, he said earnestly, "Imperial tutor, what are you trying to do by making such a big fuss? Did you have to be so ruthless? Have you ever thought about how you're going to end things if things really escalate to this point?" Dark North's attitude clearly showed that he had seen through the imperial tutor's scheme, and he didn't want the imperial tutor to continue making trouble. However, the imperial tutor was even angrier. He roared with an ashen face, "This old man is making such a big fuss, making such a big fuss? Your Majesty, that day in front of so many people, how did that bastard torture and humiliate this old man? If I don't kill him here, how can this old man swallow this anger?" Dark North shook his head and said expressionlessly, "Let's not talk about right or wrong. Just based on strength you can't kill him. Even many marshals, generals and imperial army marshals will be buried with your reckless decision. Imperial tutor, you know that there aren't many talents under this emperor's command. Stop." At this point, it was almost as if he had laid all his cards on the table. However, the imperial tutor was used to being arrogant and despotic. How could he swallow his anger and give up? With a dark face he sneered, "Your Majesty, it's because you've always been so lenient, always wanting to settle things peacefully, that so many people are dissatisfied. If you insist on doing this, you'll only alienate your subjects and make the situation worse. Those marshals, generals and imperial army marshals, what's the point of their existence? Isn't it to protect the heavenly dragon divine palace, to protect your Majesty's foundation and dignity? Even if they sacrifice themselves, it's worth it if they can help your Majesty get rid of a strong enemy and eliminate danger." After roaring in a low voice, the imperial tutor forced himself to calm down. He bowed to Dark North and said, "Your Majesty, please continue with your work. This old man won't disturb you any longer. Don't worry, this old man has already prepared everything. There will be a result within a day at most. In order to help you get rid of all obstacles, in order to help you govern this continent, this old man is willing to give up everything. Even if I have to bear all the misunderstandings and curses." At this moment the imperial tutor's body was ramrod straight. His tone had also become impassioned, full of lofty sentiments with no complaints or regrets. After saying this he turned and stepped out of the study. As for Dark North, he stared at the imperial tutor's back in a daze for a moment. He thought to himself, could it be that I was overthinking previously and misunderstood the imperial tutor? At the same time, the imperial tutor led 6 God King experts and rushed towards the soaring dragon palace with a murderous aura. At the same time, more than 2,000 imperial army marshals and more than 40 God King experts quickly gathered at the soaring dragon palace. Previously, the imperial tutor and the God Kings under his command had discussed and planned many details. But now many of the plans and details could be discarded. Since the Dragon Emperor and Dark North had already seen through it and made things clear, the imperial tutor had no more scruples. He only wanted to do his best to kill Long Tian as soon as possible and end this matter. 50 God King experts and 2,500 imperial army marshals were only the forces besieging the soaring dragon palace. Once Long Tian escaped from the soaring dragon palace and escaped within the Grand Mystery Cave Heaven, the second group of people he had arranged would complete the encirclement. The 24 god generals had already led more than 10,000 elite soldiers and were hiding in various parts of the Grand Mystery Cave Heaven, waiting for orders. Soon the imperial tutor, the God Kings and the imperial army marshals left the Dragon Emperor Divine Palace and rushed towards the soaring dragon palace. At this moment in Dark North's study, swoosh, the invisible Zhou Xian reappeared on the chair under the windowsill. He looked at Dark North with a faint sneer on his face. "If I did not come to sit here in advance, would you believe the imperial tutor's words?" The imperial tutor claimed that a few hours ago, Long Tian had sneaked into the treasury and stolen tens of billions of resources and the Grand Mystery Array disk. But in reality, Zhou Xian had been sitting in the study since a day ago. Therefore, when the imperial tutor acted in front of Dark North felt so awkward and funny. "Of course not," Dark North said calmly, "you will not harm me. Even if you want to snatch the throne of the Dragon Emperor, you will not steal the array disc. The Imperial Tutor's method this time is too perfunctory. Ji Tianqing sneered. So what if it's perfunctory? He just wants to find an excuse to attack me. After saying that, he took out 4 jade slips from his interspatial ring and threw them in front of Dark North. I think you should take a look at what the Imperial Tutor has been doing behind your back all these years. Dark North picked up the 4 jade slips and glanced at them casually. He asked, evidence of the Imperial Tutor's crimes? Where did you find them in such a short time? Or did someone else provide them to you? End of chapter. Chapter 3865. It doesn't matter where the evidence came from. You only need to see if the evidence is real or fake and if there are any mistakes. Ji Tianqing looked at Dark North with an indifferent expression, his eyes growing colder and colder. He was becoming more and more impatient with Dark North's stubbornness. Dark North didn't answer. He quickly browsed through the evidence in the 4 jade slips with his divine sense. Although he didn't show it on the surface, his expression didn't change at all. But in reality, his eyes were constantly flashing with shock and anger. Obviously, the evidence in the 4 jade slips was shocking and irrefutable. Before this, Dark North had only heard about it but didn't know the details. In fact, most of the information had been deliberately covered up. It was not until this moment that Dark North finally realized that while the royal preceptor was helping him rack his brains and share his worries, he had also done so many things to fill his own pockets and use public resources for private purposes. Rather than saying that the Imperial Tutor was helping him share his worries, it was better to say that the Imperial Tutor was secretly cultivating his forces and strengthening himself. Today, the Imperial Tutor's actual status and the power he wielded had far exceeded his expectations. Most importantly, many of the hundreds of domains and millions of people in the world thought that he was muddle-headed and incompetent, unworthy of the position of Dragon Emperor. Only the officials, generals, and domain masters under his command who knew the inside story were dissatisfied with the Imperial Tutor. To put it simply, he was the scapegoat and the Imperial Tutor was the one to gain all the benefits and power. After reading the evidence in the 4 jade slips, Dark North forcibly suppressed the anger in his heart and said calmly, Long Tian, thank you for helping me share my worries and taking the trouble to collect these evidence. I'll accept these things, but I still can't give you the results you want. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and said coldly, I've known about the Imperial Tutor's scheme for a long time. I even used a shadow-retaining ball to record the process of him and his trusted aides. Originally, I wanted to let you see the shadow-retaining ball after you finished reading the evidence. Now it seems that there's no need for that. Dark North stored the 4 jade slips into his interspatial ring and sighed. Actually, I've heard countless rumors about the Imperial Tutor over the past few hundred years. I am well aware of the fact that he eliminates dissidents and suppresses those who are loyal to him. It's just that I still have a lot of things to rely on him and he hasn't overstepped his boundaries, so I can still tolerate it. Now that the Divine Palace is weak and has been ill for a long time, it is not the time to cut off our own arms. These words undoubtedly showed that he was aware of the Imperial Tutor's many crimes, but due to the current situation he could not eliminate the Imperial Tutor for the time being. Ji Tianqing no longer tried to persuade him. He sneered and said, Actually, you just don't want to bear the infamy of being ungrateful. Why do you have to make it so complicated? Since you don't want to be the bad guy, then let me be the bad guy. In any case, the Imperial Tutor and I were like fire and water. This was something that everyone in the Celestial Palace knew. It's only natural for me to kill him. No. Dark North frowned and tried to dissuade him. You can't kill him now. First, the situation in the Celestial Palace will be turbulent and bring unnecessary disasters. Second, if you kill the Imperial Tutor, you will definitely bear the crime and become the enemy of the Celestial Palace and the Heavenly Dragon Continent. Even if you don't fear being besieged by the world, I can't let you suffer an injustice. What's more, this Grand Mystery Cave Heaven is your former residence, and all the people in this world are your master's people. Ji Tianqing was unmoved and said expressionlessly, If I insist on killing the Imperial Tutor, what can you do? Dark North was at a loss for words. He smiled bitterly and said, With your strength and means, I naturally can't stop you. But this is not a personal grudge, nor is it a Jianghu vendetta. You can just sit and watch, but why do you have to mess up the situation and make it difficult for me? Are you blaming me for being nosy? Ji Tianqing frowned and his eyes became colder. That's not what I meant. Dark North hurriedly waved his hand to explain, but Ji Tianxing was too lazy to listen and turned to leave. Seeing this, Dark North could only get up and said solemnly, Long Tian, if you are still willing to believe me, then I swear here to the spirit of the Heavenly Dragon Emperor in heaven. No matter what, I will protect the Grand Mystery Cave Heaven and the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace, and protect the foundation of the Heavenly Dragon Continent. Even if my body and bones are smashed and my soul destroyed, I will never let the hundreds of millions of people on this continent fall into war and disaster. Ji Tianxing stopped and turned to look at Dark North, watching him solemnly swear to the heavens. He could see that Dark North's thoughts, tone and eyes were all sincere, and his words were also from the bottom of his heart. After swearing, Dark North said to him again, Don't worry, I know what to do, but the time is not yet right. You have only come back once in more than 1,000 years, so you don't have to worry about these things anymore. Go and see the scenery of your old home and visit the old place again. When the Qingluan ancestor replies, I will inform you immediately. Since the words had already been said, there was no point in continuing to entangle. Ji Tianxing no longer cared about this matter and turned to leave the study. From the moment he left the study, his aura was hidden, and his figure became transparent. Next, he no longer cared about the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace and the Imperial Tutor, and wandered in the Grand Mystery Cave Heaven in a transparent state. He first went to the Divine Sword Peak and strolled freely on the peak. The ancient pine trees, vertical rocks and waterfalls of the past were still there, and there was not much difference from more than 1,000 years ago. Even the Divine Sword Palace, which had been renamed the Imperial Tutor Palace, had most likely retained its former layout. Under the eaves of the various corridors he had walked countless times. The various gardens and courtyards were also the places where he had comprehended the sword Dao and practiced sword techniques countless times. Even the dozens of golden dragon spiritual fish in the lotus pond had now grown countless times, and had cultivated into extraordinary spiritual beasts, and were about to turn into dragons. It was a pity that he remained invisible and there was no aura at all. Even though he had been standing by the lotus pond for a long time, the dozens of golden dragon spiritual fish did not notice him, and they did not surround him like before, calling him Brother Tian and asking for spiritual fruits. Of course, the heavy guards inside and outside the Imperial Tutor Palace did not notice him either. Those defensive divine arrays and restrictions were useless to him. After wandering around the Divine Sword Peak for half a day, Ji Tianxing went to the other peaks, and continued to wander in the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace. After spending 4 to 5 days, he had wandered around the 100 peaks of the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace, and then he wandered around the Grand Mystery Cave Heaven. Even though the cave heaven was very big, it was very familiar everywhere. Every mountain, every river, every flower, and every tree hid his memories of the past. After wandering around and seeing the scenery of the past, his state of mind became much calmer and more tranquil. At this time, the Imperial Tutor and his many divine generals, as well as tens of thousands of elite experts, finally gave up after 7 days. In these 7 days, under the leadership of the Imperial Tutor, they searched the entire Grand Mystery Cave Heaven crazily, just to find Long Tian. However, they found nothing. Chapter 3866. The Imperial Tutor had planned everything and mobilized 24 god generals and close to 10,000 elite soldiers. Everything was ready, but Soaring Dragon Palace was empty-handed. Long Tian had mysteriously disappeared, and he could not find him even after searching the entire Grand Mystery Grotto Heaven. The Imperial Tutor was furious and wanted to vent his anger on Long Xian. He wanted to find a reason to punish him. Unexpectedly, Long Xian had been hiding in a secret room to recuperate and did not show himself. The Imperial Tutor did not know where to start. He could not forcibly break into Soaring Dragon Palace, capture Long Xian and then announce his crimes, right? This method was too clumsy and despicable. Dark North would never agree to it. The Imperial Tutor could only suppress his anger and record this down. He would settle this with Long Xian in the future. Those 24 god generals and 10,000 elite soldiers were ordered by the Imperial Tutor to return to the Grand Mystery Grotto Heaven. They could not leave for too long. Dark North could still turn a blind eye to it for a short 7 days. If they continued to stay in the Grand Mystery Grotto Heaven, Dark North would definitely punish them for leaving their post. Thus, the Imperial Tutor could only let them go and return to their posts. He also did not have the time and energy to continue searching for Long Tian. He could only angrily believe that Long Tian was powerful and had escaped from the Grand Mystery Grotto Heaven without anyone knowing. That night, the messenger suddenly informed the imperial tutor and the southern conquering generals to go to the study to discuss important military matters. The imperial tutor could only put aside the matter of killing Long Tian and go to the study with the 6 southern conquering generals. The study was brightly lit and the atmosphere was solemn. Dark North sat behind the desk with a jade slip and a memorial in front of him. The imperial tutor and the 6 southern conquering generals stood in the study, their postures respectful and reserved. Of course, Long Xiang was not among the 6 southern conquering generals. He was still recuperating in a secret room. Everyone, I received an urgent report from the 3 southeastern regions tonight. The Sea tribe that retreated not long ago is gathering again to attack the 3 regions. This time the Sea tribe might have gathered more than 80,000 soldiers. Thus, the attack on the 3 regions this time will be more tragic than before. Dark North looked at everyone with a solemn expression and explained the reason. The 6 generals of the southern expedition suddenly became nervous, revealing expressions of righteous indignation. The imperial tutor furrowed his brows and thought for a while. Then he said in a deep voice, Long Xiang and the other 2 southern expedition generals have been investigating and resisting the attacks of the Sea tribe in the past 3 years. In the end, after the Flying Dragon Special Forces lost, they fled back to the God Palace. That was why the Sea race decided to make a comeback and gather even more elites when they realized that the power of the 3 southeastern regions was lacking. If that's the case, General Long Xiang can't absolve himself from the blame. As long as there was a chance, the imperial tutor wouldn't forget to slander the Flying Dragon Special Forces. Of the other 6 southern expedition generals, 4 were bought over by the imperial tutor, and only 2 remained neutral. When they heard the imperial tutor slandering the Flying Dragon Special Forces, the 2 of them frowned. However, they couldn't refute him. Dark North said calmly, however, General Long Xiang has experienced many dangers and made great contributions. His investigation results are basically correct. The news from the 3 southeastern regions also confirms that the Sea tribe is from the Trench tribe. The imperial tutor snorted when he saw Dark North defending the Flying Dragon Special Forces. He didn't say anything else. Dark North said in a dignified tone, I summoned all of you here to give you a heavy responsibility. I have decided to mobilize 100,000 elite soldiers and rush to the 3 southeastern regions to kill the invaders. This time he was going to beat the oceanic race into a sorry state. He was going to teach them a lesson they would never forget. Only then can they be obedient and intimidate the other 3 tribes. After all, the Trench tribe has repeatedly attacked my territory without being punished. This will definitely make the other 3 tribes restless. Do the few of you have any objections? The 6 southern expedition generals naturally didn't have any objections. They quickly bowed and said in unison, Yes, Your Majesty. We will be on standby at any time. We are willing to charge and fight a bloody battle. Dark North nodded in satisfaction and said, I have confidence in your ability to lead troops. However, this mission is very difficult. We can't afford to fail. Therefore, I have decided to send the imperial tutor to lead the 100,000 soldiers. At this point, Dark North looked at imperial tutor and asked, Imperial tutor, are you willing to go to war for me and share my burden? The imperial tutor was stunned. He frowned and didn't say anything. He had been staying in the Taishan cave heaven. At most he would patrol the various regions. He was basically only in charge of government affairs and had never led an army into battle. He didn't expect that the Dragon Emperor would suddenly ask him to lead the expedition. Moreover, it was to attack the Sea tribe in the southeast. This was too unexpected. After being stunned for a moment, the imperial tutor suddenly thought of something. A cold light flashed in his eyes. Then he bowed to Dark North and said in a serious tone, Although I have never led an army into battle, Your Majesty has ordered me to do my best. I have no problem leading the expedition, but, Your Majesty, who have you decided to send to lead the troops? Dark North pointed to the 6 southern expedition generals and said, Of course it's the 6 of them. Otherwise, why would I summon them here? The imperial tutor looked at the 6 generals and shook his head. He said, Your Majesty, I think that General Sun Yen has not led an army for more than 120 years and has not been to the 3 southeastern regions before. This expedition we swear to win and win beautifully. Therefore, General Sun Yen, Please stay in the divine palace and wait for orders. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone in the study focused their attention on a dark-skinned middle-aged general. This stout and honest-looking general was suddenly embarrassed. His face turned dark red and his eyes flashed with shame and anger. He was originally a hot-blooded and heroic general with outstanding talent in leading troops. However, he was upright and honest and had been loyal to the imperial tutor many times. It was because of the imperial tutor's deliberate suppression that he lost the right to lead troops and stayed in the Taishin cave heaven for more than 120 years. General Sun Yan thought that the Dragon Emperor's urgent summons would be his chance to rise again. He did not expect that just as he saw a glimmer of hope, it would be extinguished by the imperial tutor. Dark North obviously understood the twists and turns in this matter, but he did not want to embarrass the imperial tutor over such a small matter. Therefore he asked expressionlessly, "Then who does the imperial tutor think is suitable to replace General Sun Yan?" The imperial tutor replied without hesitation, "I think that General Long Xiang is the most suitable. Firstly, Long Xiang made a mistake before, and your majesty was kind enough to not punish him too much. However, he should atone for his mistakes and repay your majesty's favor and nurturing. Secondly, I am not clear about the actual situation in the 3 southeastern regions. Long Xiang has been active there for 3 years and knows the actual situation like the back of his hand. It is more advantageous for us to send him to lead the troops. Your majesty, please make a decision." Dark North knew that the imperial tutor was unhappy with Long Xiang and was deliberately suppressing him. However, the imperial tutor's 2 points were indeed reasonable, and he could not refute them. After pondering for a while, Dark North nodded in agreement. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 3867. The imperial tutor and the generals stayed in the study for 2 hours. Dark North discussed the battle plan with them and also discussed many detailed issues. After 2 hours they left the study and went back to prepare for the battle. The 2 messenger guards also left the Dragon Emperor Divine Palace and went to the Soaring Dragon Palace to read Dark North's order. The sun shone brightly and the guards and soldiers of Soaring Dragon Palace were currently relaxed. The 2 messenger guards came with the Dragon Emperor's order. Everyone was immediately energized and led the way to the living room. At the same time, the 2 soldiers rushed to the secret room where Long Xiang was recuperating to report this matter. After a while, Long Xiang ended his recuperation and rushed to the living room. As soon as he entered the living room, the 2 messenger guards took out the order and read it out loud. The war in the 3 southeastern regions is urgent. The Sea tribe has gathered their army again and will invade the borders in the next few days. General Long Xiang, prepare for battle immediately. Dark North's order was not announced to the world, so it was not so formal. It was just a verbal order. But the Dragon Emperor's verbal order must be obeyed and carried out. Long Xiang frowned and had mixed feelings. But he still bowed respectfully to show that he would obey the Dragon Emperor's order. The 2 messengers quickly left to report back to Dark North. Long Xiang sat on a chair in the living room and rubbed his forehead, thinking about the meaning of the order. When I came back to report, His Majesty knew that I was seriously injured and was very sure of my contribution. He also encouraged me verbally. At that time, His Majesty told me to recuperate in seclusion and that he would take care of this matter. But how long has it been? His Majesty knows that I have not fully recovered, so why did he send me to lead the army? Long Xiang vaguely felt that there must be something wrong with the Dragon Emperor's order. Therefore he hurriedly sent out 2 deputy generals and more than 10 bodyguards to scout for information. He waited in the study for 2 hours. The deputies and soldiers returned one after another and reported a series of news. Only then did he know that the Dragon Emperor had summoned the imperial tutor and the 6 generals last night and discussed in the study for 2 hours. Originally, the Dragon Emperor had planned to send the 6 generals to the battle. However, the imperial tutor had suggested that General Sun Yan stay behind so that he could lead the army. After understanding the whole story, Long Xiang was even more confused. His Majesty has sent out 100,000 elite soldiers and even let the imperial tutor take command. This expedition is obviously the best opportunity to make a contribution. It was understandable for the imperial tutor to suppress General Sun Yan. After all, the grudges between the 2 of them had been building up for a long time. But why didn't he send his own trusted aides? Why did he send me to lead the troops? Just because I'm more familiar with the situation in the 3 southeastern regions? Would the Imperial Tutor be so kind as to give this opportunity to me? Although the Flying Dragon Special Forces didn't have any objections to the idea of leading the troops into battle, they were willing to accept this opportunity to gain merit. However, when the Imperial Tutor brought up this matter, he felt that it was very unusual. With the Imperial Tutor's temperament, he would never take the initiative to do him a favor and make up with him. This must be the Imperial Tutor's scheme. I'm the commander and he's the commander. He's definitely trying to frame me. After careful consideration, the Flying Dragon Special Forces came to this conclusion and firmly believed it. However, the Dragon Emperor's orders couldn't be disobeyed. He could only accept the order and go into battle. However, he would be careful and always be on guard against the Imperial Tutor. The situation in the 3 southeastern regions was urgent. The Imperial Tutor and the 6 southern conquering generals didn't dare to delay. After receiving the order, they used 6 hours to complete their preparations and left the Grand Mystery Cave Heaven at noon to lead the troops into battle. After the Imperial Tutor left, the Grand Mystery Cave Heaven calmed down and everything became orderly. Many generals and experts who had grudges with the Imperial Tutor secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Dark North was as busy as ever. He had endless government affairs to deal with every day. He had no choice. His prestige and control weren't strong enough. He couldn't give all his power to the ruler of the 100 regions. He had to take care of everything personally and keep an eye on the ruler of the 100 regions. Only then could he ensure the peace and tranquility of the Heavenly Dragon continent. He didn't know how long this situation would last. He could only relax when the ruler of the 100 regions was willing to submit and no longer had any disloyalty. Tianxia no longer cared about the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace and the continent. He focused on being an invisible person and strolled around the Grand Mystery Cave Heaven. After more than 10 days, he walked around the Grand Mystery Cave Heaven and saw the scenery of his hometown. After he relaxed and calmed down, his state of mind changed and he gained some enlightenment. His understanding of the great Tao of heaven and earth was deeper. His foundation of the divine Tao was more stable and his strength was quietly increasing. Finally, half a month passed. On the evening of the 16th day, Dark North sent him a message. He ended his tour and returned to the study of the Dragon Emperor Divine Palace to meet Dark North again. This time the atmosphere was much more relaxed and peaceful. Dark North smiled and asked, "You've been walking around the Grand Mystery Cave Heaven and seeing the scenery of your hometown. How do you feel now?" Tianxia nodded slightly and said, "I'm enlightened. At the same time I feel more enlightened." Dark North raised his eyebrows. Naturally, he understood the meaning of this sentence. However, he didn't continue the conversation. He took out a communication jade slip and handed it to Tianxia. "This is a reply from the Blue Phoenix Patriarch. I just received it and didn't have time to check it." After that, he handed the communication jade slip to Tianxia. Tianxia took the jade slip and asked with a playful smile, "This is a message from the Blue Phoenix Patriarch. If there's any confidential information in it, it's not appropriate for me to read it, right? Why don't you read it first and tell me the answer after reading it?" Dark North waved his hand and said disapprovingly, "The Blue Phoenix Patriarch and I don't have any personal relationship. How can there be confidential information? There's nothing that can't be told. Don't worry and read it." Tianxia didn't say anything more and read the message in the jade slip with his divine sense. "Your Majesty Dragon Emperor, I've been cultivating in seclusion in the cave residence and haven't left for hundreds of years. I don't know about the matter that you mentioned." Just these 2 simple sentences. There wasn't even any extra greetings or intention to help. The facts proved that Dark North didn't lie. The Blue Phoenix Patriarch really didn't have any personal relationship with him. Otherwise, the reply wouldn't be so cold and dull. Tianxia put down the communication jade slip. His expression was a little gloomy as he said, "The Blue Phoenix Patriarch has been cultivating in seclusion in the cave residence and doesn't know about this matter. The matter has been clarified. I'll leave today." Dark North didn't pretend to urge him to stay. He nodded and said, "Don't worry. I'll try to contact other peak divine kings and try my best to help you inquire about this matter." "Thank you." Tianxia cupped his hands and bowed. He returned the communication jade slip to Dark North and turned to leave the study. If not for the Blue Phoenix Patriarch's reply, he would have left long ago. Therefore, after receiving the Blue Phoenix Patriarch's reply, he left very decisively. Not long after, he left the Grand Mystery Grotto Heaven. Next, he flew all the way to the south. He prepared to leave the Sky Dragon continent and head to the Crimson Dragon continent. Wonderful Book House.